to introduce themselves. I'll start over to my left.
Eric Holcomb, Executive Director.
Good afternoon, John Bullock, Council Representative.
I'm Ann Powell, representing the Greater Baltimore Committee.
Nicole Battle, representing Baltimore Community.
Kaval Lynn, Baltimore Committee.
Sarah Langmead. Is it Baltimore Community?
No,
Or is
you
it
know-
just a commissioner?
Well, you all are appointed by different people.
That's
Are we
right.
representing something in particular?
Some of us are, some of us aren't.
Okay, then it's just me.
Gotcha.
Jill Dennis representing residential real estate.
Peter Morrill, representing Preservation Maryland.
Catherine Good, Commissioner.
Kate Edwards, representing the Department of Housing and Community Development for Baltimore City.
Gary Rodwell, the Coppin Heights Community Development Corporation, and Baltimore Heritage.
Before we get into our agenda, we have a special thing we want to do before we begin. I would like to turn it back over to Mr. Eric Holcomb, who is our Executive Director. Eric, what's over to you?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to put on the record and make sure everybody knows that one of our founding mothers of historic preservation in the city of Baltimore passed on a couple months ago. Romaine Somerville was the first executive director and I think the second executive secretary of CHAP. Started back in 1965. All the way up to the mid-'70s, and she did wonderful work, the expansion of Mount Vernon, the designation of Bolton Hill, Dickeyville, and some of our older of our historic districts. So she was really impressive the way she moved preservation forward. Also, just wanted to say she didn't stop after the 70s. She went on to become the first woman director of the Maryland Historical Society, and did an extraordinary job there. And I'm so glad she did, because she was the one that put on the Francis Guy exhibit. Francis Guy was a landscape architect and painted numerous estates in and around Baltimore and the Baltimore region, and really gave us extraordinary amounts of historical information through those paintings. But she was always somebody very curious about history. She also headed the Preservation Society for many years, and she the last really big project she worked on was the Peel Museum. So when we are invited to the Peel grand opening and all the great work that they're doing, she was one of the founders of getting that going. And I just wanted to say personally, she was always available for me to give her a call. She always picked up the phone, and sometimes I'm always astonished that these great people pick up the phone. But she always gave me her time. She always gave me her wisdom, and we're going to miss her. So I just wanted to say that, but I also wanted to say we lost another very special person for Baltimore City, especially in the architecture. Jim Wolin passed on. He was one of the founding members of the Baltimore Dead Architects Society, which is a group of folks that got together to research 19th century architects in Baltimore City. And again, he was somebody that always picked up the phone when I called. And we had a great time together. We were always out there doing research on Baltimore and Baltimore history. And I learned so much from him, and we're going to miss him too. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you so much. So we are now going to begin our hearing, but what I wanted to do was just to share with you all just some of the ground rules. First of all, if you've come inside of the building, we have an agenda outside. If you did not get a copy of the agenda, please feel free to get the agenda. If you want to testify and speak to us today, please feel free to sign your name. Mind you, we give people maximum 4 minutes. When the 4 minutes is up, I will raise my hand just to give you a warning sign. And if there's additional comments that you'd like to share, we usually give you more time depending on the capacity of the room. After that, you'll feel free to sit back down and still stay with us as the commissioners continue to discuss and talk, and we may ask you questions. So we want to go through that. I want to actually go to our commissioners. We actually had minutes that were sent out before the meeting. Ones that I asked if I could make a motion to approve the last minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. If you look at our agenda, we have a consent agenda. And right now, what we're going to do is bring up 1006 Holland Street, Union Square Historic District. The proposal is the reconstruction and expand three-story rear addition. In the application, please forgive me if I say the name wrong, Aaron Johnson, and our staff person who will be talking to us today would be Tyreek Charles. So, okay. Tyreek here?
Tyreek is here. He's speaking with someone.
Okay, gotcha. Go right ahead.
There's no objection.
Okay,
There's no one signed in to testify.
gotcha, okay.
No one signed in to testify.
Thank you.
So,
Also,
yeah, we're not gonna.
I also wanted to say this as well. Commissioner, some of your mics are still on, so just in case if you're not speaking, please feel free to turn them off, but if you are speaking, please feel free to turn them back on. Okay.
So we can ask for it.
Sure, let's do, I'm gonna make a motion, forgive me, for the consent for 1006 Holland Street.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now we will move to our regular agenda. The next property is Baltimore City Historical Preservation. We have 517 South Broadway, Fells Point Historic District. The proposal is a final review, construction, and new 5-story building. The applicant is Tamar Ezet, and our staff who will be giving us a presentation will be Ed Long. And what we will do now, I want to share with you all just some of the guidelines. So our public hearings are conducted in a quasi-judicial format. And during the hearing, we receive evidence to determine that proposed changes are to be made or if they need to be made. And what happens is we have our staff actually come up and they give us information on the proposals. And then after that, we allow, if there's anyone who has any questions in the committee to come up and the hearing to come up and be on stage, they can actually give those actual questions or present to us. And then, of course, the commission will then go right ahead and ask any questions to you regarding the application. Yep.
All right. So good afternoon. I'm Stacy Montgomery, and I'm presenting first before 517 South Broadway. Will present the revisions to the Historic Preservation Design Guidelines. All right. So this is a rehearing of an item that was previously approved by the previous commission back in 2021, and we are rehearing this on a technical matter. So I'm going to give us two sets of background. One is the background on the actual revision process that happened over the last few years. And then the second slide is going to go into the technical reasons why this is back with us today. So periodically, the staff and the commission make revisions to the design guidelines. The most recent, prior to this campaign, the most recent extensive revisions of the guidelines happened in 2014 and 2015, and those changes were codified by the previous commission on December 8th, 2015 at a CHAP hearing. Those revisions included formatting updates, the grammar and that sort of thing, but also creating we separated actually the rules of procedure from the design guidelines and made changes based on revisions to the ordinance, section 6, the section of Baltimore City Code that authorizes CHAP. So then in February 11th of 2019, the commission approved the addition of the artistic expression design guidelines, a new chapter that talked about things like murals and other artwork in our historic districts and on our landmarks, as well as some other minor changes. Then in January of 2021, the staff, after a lengthy review of the entire, and I'll hold this up, the entire design guideline document, page by page, guideline by guideline review, proposed alterations to design guidelines first in January during a public briefing session. Then we had our first hearing about this in February 9th of 2021, where the staff presented the proposed alterations and the comments they had received from the community stakeholders. And I'll put out that during this time, CHAP posted all of this information on their website, as well as the process, drafts, that had like the lines through it showing those changes, then sent numerous email blasts to our 3,000 plus recipients of our agenda, as well as our 2,000 plus recipients of our tax credit program emails. So we did substantial outreach during this period. We also then, after the February meeting, staff met with individual neighborhoods that are historic districts to discuss those changes. They came back and we presented again at the March 9th, 2021 hearing. The materials that we're seeing today, these things were presented then. And then a final proposal, the final version was heard and approved by the commission, the previous commission, on April 13th of 2021. So these guidelines have been out and about and were approved by the previous commission then. But why are we hearing them today? So concurrently to our process, the City of Baltimore adopted what is known as the Baltimore City Administrative Procedure Act, or the APA, and this made a requirement that all rules and procedures need to meet a format, a specific format, and required some specific outreach. During the early parts of 2021, as we were revising our guidelines, we were working with the law department at the same time to determine how our guidelines would be included in this process, if we had to completely revise them to make them meet this new format, or if they could be adopted by reference. And we got an answer to that in the summer of 2021. I can't put an exact date on it, but after we had gone through the guidelines revisions approval. And so staff began to work to prepare to have the guidelines updated so they could be adopted by reference. The law department said we did not have to completely redo them. They could be adopted by reference. And we provided those by the deadline in early 2022 to the law department. But when the law department looked at them, they told us that we actually had missed one step, which was a specific public commentary that needed to be taken for these guidelines, that we needed to meet some very specific requirements for public outreach, and that although our outreach was very extensive to our partners, we didn't do some you need to advertise with each city council person and each library, that sort of thing. So we needed to do that. So we did that. On May 14th, we opened a public comment period. We posted the information on this on the websites that we were supposed to and in the places that we were supposed to. We opened that up, and the public comment period ends today, June 14th, 2022. So we are rehearing these not because anything has changed in what we were proposing since April of 2021, but because we did not follow some very specific outreach. Just to be very, very clear, there's no change in any of the requirements that were, or any of the guidelines, or any of the content of this since 2021. So what is the proposal? So it is to make the following, this is sort of a summary of the modifications that were initially proposed. First, a modification to the visibility of rooftop elements. So one of the things that we noticed as we read through these guidelines was that there was an inconsistent use of different things to describe the front of a building. And so we wanted to make that term consistent and use the word the term primary elevation, where we saw other things throughout the guidelines just to have consistency, so we're clear we're always talking about the same thing, but also some added flexibility for rooftop elements. And we'll get into specifics of each of these. We also wanted to have some clarification about murals. We had put in the guidelines for artistic expression and realized after sort of test driving those for a year or two that there were some clarifications that were needed. We wanted to put in some additional language for screens and storm doors, the removal of any duplicative language, which there was a lot of, new guidance for garage and carriage house doors, and the insertion of language about risk reduction, which deals with lead-based paint for special windows, which are windows that are highly ornamental. And just our process for guidelines revision is we follow section 1.11 of our rules of procedure, which says that any amendments made to the historic preservation design guidelines require at a minimum 2 hearings unless there is consensus among all commissioners present to act on the item at the first hearing. And this would be the 4th hearing on this item. So we have met that requirement of a minimum of 2. We're on number 4. So now we'll get into the specifics of what was proposed. And you can see here in this table sort of the easiest way to see it is what section, what chapter we're revising of the guidelines, and you can literally see the edits here. In blue, that's new text and things that were crossed out, and then the reasoning why we made those changes. So, for doors, specifically to storm doors, we wanted to make sure that the new storm doors were appropriate to the type and style of the house, which was something that communities had brought to our attention was necessary. For windows, we wanted to be clear on window screens specifically that the screening material is as unobtrusive as possible. For chimneys, where replacement or dismantling of chimneys is necessary, really we wanted to focus that these are chimneys that are visible from a primary elevation. This is again one of those things that the language consistency, we replaced public right-of-way with primary elevation, which is a term that we're trying to use throughout the document. All right, roofs and roof decks, this is we noticed, for instance, that often we see requests to construct roof decks on the rears of properties, and our guidelines had initially said that that is the most appropriate place to put them and that they shouldn't be visible from a primary elevation. However, in some cases, actually locating a roof deck in the center of the roof is the least visible location and may be appropriate. So we wanted to open the door for that as well. And then we also wanted to talk about access, and you'll see, but we have requests for things like what we call a doghouse or a pop-up to access rooftop additions, and that is not something that meets our guidelines, but we wanted to be more proactive and provide methods of access that can allow people to access their roof decks without constructing pop-ups. A lot of stuff is about roof decks because we're seeing definitely an increase in requests for those. And then the other piece that we added is to not install pergolas and other overhead permanent structures on roof decks. Roof decks have generally, our caveat for approving them is that they are not visible. The installation of pergolas and overhead kind of roof structures on top of roof decks make them very, very visible from the street. And that was, again, another type of request that we saw that we wanted to cover. For 1.9.3, carriage houses, garages, sheds, and outbuildings, we added a new guideline which says preserve and maintain existing historic garages and carriage house doors. Where these are missing or deteriorated beyond repair, install new garage doors that are appropriate for the building type and period of construction. We actually had no guidelines about doors on garages, and for suburban neighborhoods that do have detached garages, that's pretty important. In some of our neighborhoods, the garages are a reflection of the architectural style of the primary house, so that's important. And then in 1.16, lead-based paint hazards. For special windows, which we define special windows as windows of a higher architectural style, maybe they have stained glass or they have maybe they're rounded windows or have curved glass or have highly detailed mullions, things like that, where replacement is not appropriate or other methods of risk reduction may include fixing a sash in place, installing interior storm windows, removing lead-based paint, and repainting and installing jam liners. Again, this is about being more proactive in terms of ways to address lead-based paint so that we can help folks not just tell them what they can't do, but tell them what they can do in these cases. And then, as I had mentioned, in 2019, we had added a section on a chapter 6, the Artistic Expression Design Guidelines, and one of our sections was on murals. And we had a number of mural requests, and we continue to gut a number of them. And so as we've used these guidelines more extensively, we wanted to clarify them. So our guidelines now read CHAP encourages the painting of murals only on previously painted surfaces. New murals should not damage historic masonry or alter historic streetscapes where unpainted masonry is a character-defining feature. So we don't want people painting murals on the fronts of on a street that is historically unpainted brick on the fronts of those. That's not an appropriate place for a mural. In most cases, masonry elevations that were not historically painted should not be painted. If a mural is proposed on an unpainted surface, please contact CHAP staff to determine whether painting will cause damage to the masonry substrate. When murals are installed on unpainted surfaces, they must use paint that can be removed without using destructive methods such as sandblasting. And those guidelines were placed the guideline that is all crossed out, which had said, in most cases, masonry elevations that were not historically painted should not be painted. CHAP shall consider paint, color, and schemes to be reversible. A broad range of colors and schemes may be permissible as long as the paint scheme does not overwhelm the historic character of the immediate surrounding areas. So we found that guideline to be very vague and not really helpful in terms of the actual requests that we were getting. So we hope that these new bullets will be a little bit clearer, and just we want to, in case you're not clear, CHAP doesn't have any authority over the content of murals, so we're really focused here on location and on the types of paint to not cause damage to the historic building. And then we also added, in most cases, do not place, we fixed this guideline. We again used the clarification of secondary elevations and just, we don't want to have murals on primary facades of historic buildings, but secondary elevations may be appropriate locations for murals. Okay. And lastly, CHAP, this is the clarifying piece, but I think it's really important. CHAP was limited to the location of murals. CHAP review is limited to the location of murals. Content of proposed murals is not within CHAP purview. However, CHAP strongly encourages community input. And this was something that came from our, the communities wanted some input in terms of content, but also our previous commission felt very strongly that there should be neighborhood, an opportunity for the community to provide input on the murals in their communities. So we don't have any regulatory authority over that, but we strongly encourage that applicants who want to paint murals work with the community about that. And just again, I spoke about this earlier, but this is our process for amending design guidelines. As I said, there's a minimum of 2 hearings. It's actually, in reading it, it's actually the 4th hearing regarding this item. So we've had, this morning I received a second comment. We've had 2 comments during this current period. One was from a homeowner in Bancroft Park who was just generally not really clear about how the guidelines work. And so I think that that's going to be something, and all the comments are on the Wix site, but they were generally more concerned about CHAP's being overreaching and having too much authority. But these guidelines, as I said, this document has been in place since 2015. The guidelines have been in place since, I think, the founding of CHAP, so in some form or another. So I don't think that we've done that. And then the other comment came from a member of the the Fells Point Architectural Review Committee, who was really interested in more information on the construction and the techniques behind historic wood windows. And I think that his comments were really, really wonderful, but probably more suited towards a separate document, which the staff has been interested in doing for a long time, talking more about the construction of windows to help our applicants who replace windows have a better understanding of what we're looking for. But that would probably suit better as a separate standalone document because it would be very long. And then staff, as previously, we recommend approval of the proposed revisions. We created them, we definitely recommend approval of them. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Stacy, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Stacy?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I have one question. It's not actually relevant to our proposal, but who is responsible for content review and ensuring that there is community input?
Of the murals?
Yes.
So I don't believe that at least we're allowed to, I'm not sure. The zoning is, they would review it to make sure there's, for instance, they look to see if murals are signs or if they're murals or if they're billboards and that sort of thing. But I'm not sure that governments are legally allowed to regulate the content of signage.
Because of First Amendment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's considered art.
Yeah.
I just thought of a question that I had that came up. What about, one thing that I don't think that the guidelines talk about are murals on primary elevations in new construction in historic districts.
Yes, you're right about that. And I think we covered it by saying in most cases. So I think
Because I know that we've had that happen, and
Yeah.
and frankly I was conflicted about it. And so I just felt like, you know, do we want to change the language around that?
I think that's something to think about, especially as we look at our new construction design guidelines about the placement of art on new construction. And I can check and see if we have anything that was.
So this is specifically for like renovation work, sorry.
I have the guidelines right here, so let me just open up chapter 6. Hang on a second. Because again, these are only revisions that were made. So if there was an existing guideline, there may be, and I don't remember off the top of my head, if the artistic expression guidelines maybe spoke to murals on new construction, there isn't anything on there.
I don't remember that there
Okay.
was anything.
Sorry, hang on one second. Yeah, you know, I mean, again, we use kind of in most cases. So that may be, well, it's new construction, that's sort of at the opportunity for the commission to weigh whether it's appropriate in that location. But if you want more clarity in terms of on new construction, I think that's a bigger conversation though about how the
Well,
commission
I mean, I
feels.
guess I'm asking, I think it deserves the conversation because I
Okay.
felt like that without it being represented in the guidelines, it was really never brought into the commission's conversation for consideration. And personally, I felt like it was a topic that was worth discussing in the review of that project. And so what is the appropriate way to, like, I don't want to mess up the process of where we are in this now. I just was thinking about it. So I'm not sure what we do with something like that.
I agree, and that I think that's something worth discussing. We've been having conversations about, having some further conversations about the guidelines and things like that. But for today's point, I think it's about the importance of correcting the oversight of the process to make sure that we get these adopted as is. But we can look at that at a future date.
And I would say our new construction design guidelines, I think I mentioned in the briefing, they're next on our list of things that really need a hard look in terms of, so this is something that would be appropriate to put on that list. But
That's good.
you get to make that decision. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get a little confused about what guidelines do what. So if there is a specific new construction guideline, then that's the better place to make the revision, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Okay, so what we have on the floor right now is a recommendation for the Baltimore City Historical Preservation Guidelines revisions to be approved by the commission. Do we have a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. So next on our agenda, we have 517 South Broadway, which is the Fells Point Historic District. And the proposal is a final review of construction, a new 5-story building. The applicant is Tamir Azet, and the staff who will be speaking today will be Mr. Eddie Leon.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We're getting older here. Gotta switch glasses. 517 South Broadway in the Fells Point Historic District. We are looking at a final review of construction, a 5-story apartment building with ground floor retail. The building is located here along Fells Point, along South Broadway in the 500 block. The property had been at one time a Hex department store and later a grocery store. It burned down roughly 10 or plus years ago and has been a vacant site ever since, and an eyesore in the community. Background, June 2012, the property suffered a 5-alarm fire. In September 2021, a proposal was presented to the commission for the concept design of the same project. It was approved with recommendations to provide context, demonstrate how the building design is compatible with surrounding historic buildings, address the surface parking lots, and provide more information on the side elevations. The applicants have provided, did provide a revision, and the current plans as presented meet the request of the previous commission. Here we have the artist rendering of the proposal as it would look in context in the location that at 517. This is the site plan. It shows the ground floor and part of the rear of the property. The staff applied the following sections of the Baltimore City Historic Preservation Guidelines when reviewing this: 2.4 building features, 2.4.1 building entrances, 2.45 roofs, 2.5 materials, 2.5.1 windows and doors and windows, and 2.5.2 materials. Inside here, we are looking at 2.4.1 building features. The proposal contains 3 primary entrances on the ground floor level, 2 for retail and 1 for residences. The 2 entrances at either end are appropriate to the fenestration pattern and rhythm of the front facade. The midsection restaurant door entry is located to a far end of the central retail openings on the ground floor. This asymmetrical placement isn't the typical location on the facade that otherwise has a strong symmetry. We see here next 2.45 roofs. We're looking at the roof design is a simple flat roof with a 4th floor setback to provide for recessed porch that faces onto Broadway. 5th floor is set back and incorporates a cornice band level as a hidden railing, as there is a rooftop deck on this level. Mechanical equipment will be set back on the rooftop and high enough that it will not be readily visible from the public right of way. 2.5.1 doors and windows. Materials for the doors and windows are all appropriate to the contemporary style of the building. Doors and storefront windows are proportional to the historic streetscape and do not appear out of scale for the new building. Residential windows and on the 2nd and 5th floors are compatible with other nearby buildings of similar scale and are not out of scale to the adjacent buildings. The entrances are not clearly distinguished, and there is no clarity between the retail and residential entry points at this time, which would help assist the pedestrian users finding the correct entry. The applicants have indicated they'll work with staff on making appropriate modifications to this issue. Next, we have 2.5.2 materials. The applicant has selected an assortment of contemporary brick, cast stone, metal panel cladding, and hardy panel siding that is appropriate to the new construction and the materials of the surrounding neighbor buildings. Neighborhood comments. Design Review Committee met on May 24th to review the proposal. The committee noted several items of concern regarding the lap siding on the side elevations, the rear elevation, and requesting additional articulation. There was concern about the front retail facade and central storefront opening entryway, locations for the doors of the retail. They had concerns over entry and the height. The usage of copper panels was indicated as well. This is the front facade as presented. The first ground floor is clad in a darker banding and storefront windows. The 2nd and 3rd stories are metal clad windows and have metal paneling. The 4th floor has a recessed deck space that has a railing and supporting beams over top. And then the final 5th floor is set back, and also the railing system is hidden by incorporating the design with a large cornice band area. The side elevations, as we see here, this is on the left is the Broadway front elevation, and then setback are the spaces abutting property immediately adjacent. Therefore, there are no windows on this side elevations. The opposite also is the same situation. There are no windows on these on the sides as well because they abut the property line. Summary analysis. The applicant is proposing a 5-story building on the current vacant site, 5th floor setback 10 feet from the front elevation. The building does not fill the entire site and includes a surface parking lot. They've provided the requested changes and additional material that the commission previously had requested. The staff concurs with the DRC that the lap siding is inappropriate and like flat, smooth, hardy panels would be more appropriate to the contemporary design. The rear elevation design details are appropriate to the contemporary style of the building. The 4th floor front elevation is recessed. The porch appears to be dark and have a cavernous appearance. And staff recommends that the applicant propose how to lighten the space and the exterior panel on the sides for each of the recessed spaces. Staff believes that the applicants should explore incorporating a canopy or signage above the entries to better relate to pedestrians. And a central retail location would be better served through the centrally located entry, which would retain the overall symmetry of the building. The use of materials is largely appropriate to the contemporary style of the building and is compatible with the surrounding historic buildings. Recommendation, concept approval of the final design. Following recommendations are noted. Consider reducing the amount of lap siding or replace with panel siding. Consider centering the ground floor retail restaurant entry. Explore lightening the 4th floor front elevation deck space. Thank you, commissioners.
Eddie, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Eddie?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The CHAP staff had mentioned the position of the lap siding from the FDRC's recommendation.
Yes.
You said that you felt that the lap siding was appropriate or not appropriate on that rear
We felt a reduction of the lap siding or removal completely and in place with panel siding would be appropriate.
So you feel right now that the showing of the lap siding currently, you feel it's more, the staff is feeling more appropriate of paneling to come around the corner and turn.
Both the side elevations that are visible to any public right of way should be not lap siding, but rather panel siding.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Looking at the staff report for the other commissioners, I'm looking at page 10, if you want to look at the same thing I'm looking at. The previously proposed elevation brings the kind of plaster column lines in the center down to the base. In the community comment, that was one of the comments that came through, and there was a response from the owner or the architect about kind of wanting to break up the rigid grid system. However, especially in light of looking at if a central entrance isn't able to be provided, it seems like there's kind of just a lot of big blank empty area in the center, and so you have this very kind of strong top, but your base doesn't really have like a focal point, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. So I know that one of the comments was about the trying to put the door in the center, but I also remember reading that there was maybe some issue with floor elevations.
Correct, and I have spoken to the architect about this situation, and one remedy that they're exploring and maybe they'll address is possibly putting a balance of two-door entrances on that central bay, large bay portion to give symmetry to and balance to the storefront level.
Okay, so that's something that has happened since
Since the
this
report was
submitted.
posted.
But I guess that's just one thing I wanted to point out to the commissioners, because the way the previously proposed elevation reads at the base versus the current proposed elevation is very different. And so I just wanted to bring that up for the commissioners to be aware of.
Commissioner, thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions for Eddie?
Sorry, one more question?
Yes, sir.
Currently, the restaurant lease space is not ADA accessible, is that correct? I mean, right now it's showing a step into that front door.
The architect can better address the ADA access.
I only say that because it's not showing a ramp now, but, you know, if something comes about and says that, hey, that has to be ADA accessible, then it's going to be something of a pretty substantial element that's going to be put in front of the facade. I'm just wondering how that's going to be addressed.
I think from the plan that the far left door
Yeah.
goes into the same space.
Yeah, I think that on the central door is probably emergency egress. I'm sure the architect can do that, but the primary entrance is to the left, which seems to me to be possibly in response to the comment that they received earlier about distinguishing the residential entry from the restaurant entry by having them separate on either side of the building. It's kind of easier to distinguish them than were the central entry to move to the middle.
Are we also going to hear from?
The architect is here.
All right, so.
Wait, I have another question for Eddie.
Go right ahead.
before. Just clarifying the point that you just made where you said that it's a different proposal now, where there's something about two doors, but what were you talking about?
The central bay portion on the ground level has as you see three entrances. The two entrances on either side are symmetrically balanced, and that's fine. The central area has that one side door.
Right.
A recommendation and discussion with the architect has been putting another door at the other end
Okay.
to give a symmetrical, balanced view.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to fully understand. Thank you.
Alternately, I wonder if the door could be designed to blend in a little bit better with the storefront system so that you're kind of not reading it as a door from the exterior as much, rather than putting in a door that doesn't need to be there. Yeah, it's another idea.
Are there any more questions, commissioners? Eddie, thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, we'd like to ask the architect to come up.
Everything was given to them in a package, separate from.
Hello, commissioners. It's my first time in person in a long time, so if I stutter, that's why.
And please feel free to state your name.
My name is Tamer Izet, and I'm the principal architect in charge of this project. And if we wanted to elaborate on some of the questions that were already posed, or if there's any new questions, I'm happy to answer them. But just to speak on some of the questions about the ground floor, when the first CHAP submission went in, we filed supplemental information which reflected more like this facade. We had, at the time, to meet the deadline for submission, that front-end rendering that had the different coloration and the piers coming down to grade. That was an early rendition, which was really a placeholder. So I don't know, we were hoping that would get stricken at one point, but that was not what was presented at the 9-10 presentation or what was really reviewed. It was very much in line with what we have now. What we've only really iterated on is some of the materiality, the specificity of that materiality, and storefront door locations as we've indicated currently. In response to some of the FDRC comments, there are some things that we're going to be pulling in relative to the storefront configuration. One being a datum line that's consistent across all the door heads going in, so there isn't a drop at the residential door. And frankly, that's more of just a modeling issue on my end that I kind of miss. But outside of that, there is, to Kapow's point, there is ADA accessibility within the space. It's actually an 11-inch drop from left to right. That's 60 linear feet, that whole site. So the only real way to not have an ugly exterior ramp was to have a slab fold inside the building. So if we were to go to the site plan, which I don't have any capability of, is this magic? Okay. It'll go back at some point, I'm sure. It's probably pixelated, but there you go. Right at the division of where the color is blue and yellow, that would be an 11-inch slab fold there. So there's an 11-foot internal ramp, which would then bring you back up from the residential lobby to the rear side, which would also be on the same elevation as the retail commercial. So we had to get a little creative with hiding some of those elevational differences. And in response to that, we didn't want some haphazard diagonal on the ground floor plane on the commercial front. So that's really why we introduced kind of that 1 foot, a 1'6" darker band on the ground floor to hide that condition that we would have, which would ultimately be a step. So, you know, design is iterative, and I think there's probably 100 solutions we can come up with. And I think some of the stuff that we're talking about now is a little bit higher level and kind of talking about differentiating retail from residential entry. There might be a splash of color that happens in the upper transom band or something like that that indicates, you know, that's in line with what we're doing, or some distinct signage. And we're happy to work with staff on that exact solution. Relative to canopies, we're hesitant with canopies due to the long-term maintenance issues of them. They tend to degrade quickly, and the factor that canopies have a yearly fee that you pay for minor privilege as well. So it's just one of those extra layers of approvals and review and, frankly, financial maintenance that you maintain. So we tend to stay away from canopy as much as we can, canopy or awning. So those are some of my initial answers. If there's anything else, I'm here.
By all means, go ahead.
Just to make sure we cover all the staff comments, because I know there were some follow-up discussions. One of the staff comments was about lighting at the 4th floor. Was there any further discussion about a response to that comment since the submission?
Yeah, absolutely. The hardest part with renderings is that it's never real life. So you work with the team that you have and your capabilities, and so sometimes some of those balconies are hard to actually show what it would really be with diffuse light and indirect light access. We studied, or at least discussed internally, I think it was staff that made suggestions like, do we create apertures on that 5th floor to create more daylight in to that 4th floor? For us, that becomes a separation issue and UL assembly issue and safety. Obviously, we can't put side openings on the sides that face abutting properties. Again, a code issue. So our largest response is mainly to work on the exact perforation level of those panel railings to allow more daylight in through the front, as well as using light materials on that recessed plane. We don't intend to use any dark materials. It's going to match the light siding that happens on the 5th floor, and also soffit lighting on the underside of that roof, which is really the lid to that 4th floor level, which should help from a lighting perspective, just generally for the occupants, and as well as light reflection using the lighter panels in there for bringing just daylight into the units proper. So that was important for us to not have a really deep recess there as well, because of that concern.
So just for the record then, the rendering shows that kind of 4th floor as a gray area, but that's strictly a modeling side effect. The intention is that the material remains consistent.
Correct. My biggest, this is the first time we've heard that comment, which is an astute comment. So our real focus was trying to get the materiality to read really realistic and true to what the specs are. So that honestly is an oversight of trying to make sure that was illuminated in a way that
I understand how models go sometimes, so I just wanted to make sure.
Sometimes bites you.
Yeah, I would echo also that I think that the top floor, the top looks very heavy in the context of the neighborhood, especially since that is the portion of the building that rises above the adjacent buildings. But I do see from the dimensions of the loggia that it probably would not read as darkly as it is reading on this elevation, except potentially at, one particular lighting condition at a particular time of year, time of day. So yeah, thinking about ways to get light in there. And I don't know that you can reduce any of the heights at the top, but it does seem, the top of the 4th floor level does seem a bit heavy.
Yeah, I think that darker band, that's really a drop beam that's going to be supporting the roof and the masonry lintel. I believe that can be reduced in its actual depth. So we're working through some of the finer points with our structural team to make sure that that dark band doesn't read as deep vertically, which I think should help a little bit. And honestly, it was outside of putting balconies that protruded into public space, we wanted to activate that facade in some capacity. So those are really, they're frankly a difficult thing to detail with all the internal drainage and waterproofing and all that. But it's something that we really wanted. There's not a lot of that on Broadway overlooking the water. So it is a point that we want to make sure that works. So we definitely don't want that to be the units that people don't want to rent because they feel cavernous. So it's a concern to all of us. But I think, again, dimensionally, I think it works, and it's only like a 6-foot-ish setback. So it's not so cavernous that it's like a 10-foot or something like that. So I think from a plane standpoint and light working its way through, I think it should work out pretty well.
Now, you're showing the front of that soffit painted. Is it painted black or something very dark?
It's a dark panel that should be, we want to remain matching what our general dark colors are on the building. So our cast stone dark
iron
color.
spot brick and the
Correct.
dark railing.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah,
be
I
probably
wonder,
a metal wrap.
I can see how in the pure elevation, those spaces are reading as voids at the top, and so by painting it out dark, it unifies it as one thing. But I do wonder if in practice, and I think that this rendering shows it more of how it would look from the street, to just consider, it could be that lightening that color makes it step back, but not appear as heavy at the same time.
I can see that's a great point. I think that's something we can study with staff for the final approval. I don't know when you go in for permit if there's like another layer. I think there is. We will make sure that those colors reflect that. I think that's a good point. I think that would actually hide the idea that it feels so dark up there. Not hide, but not point out
Reduce
the fact
it a
that
bit,
it looks
yeah.
so
Well,
dark.
I mean, I can see how you want it to kind of step back and blend in, but it could be that a lighter shade will do that for you more effectively.
Just a quick question. What's the materiality of the dark bands that are going across?
That'll be like a brake metal that'll wrap the beam, because a hardy at the joints won't look very good over time. So we'd want to be able to turn the corner underneath in something that's more resilient.
Okay.
So just other question, and I have a feeling the answer is no, because we've got a property line, but was it looked into whether or not the ends, the two edges of the balcony could also have an opening, or is that an issue because of ratings and property boundaries?
Code 1, but we wanted to introduce those inset panels to allude to the fact that we studied it. But at least it wasn't just like a thick masonry thing that wrapped the corners. We wanted that peer reading and almost that loggia sense to have some type of a corner effect. But yeah, it's
That makes sense. I just didn't know if it had been explored to be able to try to get light in there, but I know there are lots of rules around that. So, was it considered at all to bring the kind of copper panel effect up to the balcony level as well?
That's frankly a color choice that we're actually trying to introduce in other places just lightly and kind of make a further nod to it. I didn't want to oversaturate the elevation. I thought it created right now like this nice base middle top configuration that was that we feel is pretty strong, and it relates to some of the adjacent buildings that introduce copper as well. So it was really a nod to some of the materiality that happens adjacent. But yeah, that may be something that we can do. And it's frankly, we're just trying to make sure that wherever we do introduce it, it doesn't introduce a staining element or something that would drip down and create something that long-term is unintended. So where we have those things, a drip edge is going to have to be very considered when we use that in material.
And I believe I saw, oh yes, here it is, pre-patina. It'll be pre-patina. Okay.
Okay, great. Commissioners, do we have any other questions?
I have one
Yes, ma'am.
question,
Go right
which
ahead.
I thought, would you clarify what the intent is for the retail space? Like, is the commercial space in the building
Right now, we're trying to, up to 2 tenants. It's not gonna be multiple. It'll probably be a front-back configuration, which is why we're trying, so there'll probably be access off a register and access off of Broadway, or it'd be long demise. We're trying to basically build in the infrastructure that would allow for whatever tenancy he's able to broker, meaning trying to get shafts for possible restaurant, for hood venting, and so we're considering some of those things and making sure that the hoods don't evacuate laterally, but vertically, things like that. So right now, as drawn, it's just one large space, but we're really just trying to build in the flexibility. As you know, brick and mortar presence and retail is tough right now, but we think there's going to be an upturn soonish. People are back out, people are going places, so.
I just wanted to clarify that there was not actually a plan for that lower level, so some of the conversation was conjecture.
Yes.
Like about what primary and secondary entry is. So.
Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to share?
All right, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Eddie, if you could you take us back to the final page?
I don't believe anyone else is here from the public.
Is that about to answer in a second? So before we move forward, is there anyone else, like we don't have anyone's name else on the list, is there anyone else who would like to comment? Okay. So commissioners, what we have on the table right now is a recommendation for the 3 items at the bottom. Consider reducing the amount of lap siding or replace with panel siding. Consider centering the ground floor retail or restaurant entry. And finally, explore lightening the 4th floor from elevation space. I'd like to put a motion on the floor for those 3.
So, I think that we might need to amend the motion to either for the centering of the ground floor or to create a symmetrical entrance opening.
A more symmetrical
A more
condition at the first
symmetrical
floor.
appearance for the
Well,
central storefront.
Okay.
My question is, how do people feel about the fact that the residential lobby has no differentiation from the retail look? I mean, I understood there can't be a canopy, but it still seems like there's nothing that proclaims one a place for apartments and one side of the entrance.
So I guess, because our chairman put a motion on the table officially, right?
We usually don't make a motion until we've had discussion.
Yeah, so that's what point
So-
of clarification.
Gotcha. Well, we need further discussion. We can have it right now. Of course,
Yeah.
of course we can.
That's why I'm asking.
Clearly, yeah.
I mean, I think we can, the architect, and I mean, it's really up to the architect and the owner, maybe considering on the glass over the door, maybe something that identifies it as residential as opposed to, separating the residential from the commercial. And I don't know, I'm referring to
I think
you
he mentioned
because you're the
something about
architect.
changing the color or something like, he said, maybe a strip, somebody said something about a.
I mean, I think there are ways to address that without adding a canopy.
Yeah, I think what we discussed, and I think Eddie pointed it out in his intro, working with staff on the appropriate signage to properly visually distinguish those 2 entrances. I believe that's right. I think we went with an understated initially, but I could see how maybe a pop of something, we just haven't iterated on that, and I don't want to necessarily throw something out that's in poor taste. So I think that's just something that we could work on the finer details with the staff, with, of course, staff guidelines to differentiate.
Point of, I guess, operation for us as a commission, is that something that can fall into the purview for staff review and approval after this presentation? Okay.
We're still deliberating, right?
Yes, sir. We're still deliberating. Yep, go right ahead.
Just wanted to add a few comments, and they're a little bit sporadic, so I apologize. The one thing that I think I still is a concern for me is the rear facade, where you have paneling on the back facade, but then it turns to lap siding just very abruptly. I know it's a rear sort of facing building for the property standpoint, but it's still facing Register Street, and Register Street's a primary facade for everybody on that street. So in sort of in continuation of the reduction of lap siding, my recommendation is to at least take the paneling to the side of the larger mass in the rear. So there's a certain sense of a continuity, and that we can read that as a singular mass as opposed to facade, 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 facade. Just that's one of the consistencies that I'd like to see, and that starts to sort of minimize the multiplicity of all the materialities that potentially are on that project right now. And so that's just, you still, as a public, even though you're set back quite a bit, and because of that fact, the public is going to see that, so I think there is validity to at least continue the materiality effort around on both facades of that and make that mass, cohesive. That's one comment I have. And then on on page 25, just going back to that front rendering, and it was commented before about the side, sort of the side opening. If you go back, I'm sorry, one more back, maybe the rendering perspective of the front. That there's definitely a sense of developing high quality material and sort of a three-dimensional design of the project facing Broadway, and it just seems like it's kind of out of place that panel, that hardy panel, on the side is just there. We always see that as like it is a contemporary material that's typically sort of recessed back or reset, and it's like this is kind of part of that front mass. And I'm not saying that it should be brick there, because I mean it's done well that you've articulated that you're kind of continuing the articulation around the corner. So even if it was inset brick, it probably fits better than having paneling that it looks like it was kind of like I ran out of material, or I have something in the future for that, or it just doesn't quite fit there. So I would just,
the loggia, specifically, the loggia panel.
the loggia panel, I'm sorry, yeah, on the side, yeah. So that and if you can tell in this rendering, like it makes sense how you have the paneling in that rear facade, the rear massing, but just the one that's thick, that zone right there just seems like it's a bit out of place. Those are my two comments.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to contribute? So it looks like we have a couple of changes and recommendations that we have to set forth that are uniquely different, not too uniquely different, but different from what was given to us as recommendations moving forward to vote on. So what we have to do, Eric, you've written down some changes.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
We need to put all of those
Yep.
into
Yes.
the motion. Okay.
Yeah.
So it could be approval of final design with the following conditions. One would be on the registered elevation, take the paneling, eliminate the lap siding and take the paneling to the larger mass. Does that make sense to you, Kapow?
Yes,
Commissioner?
that does, yeah.
And then on the Broadway street, on the fourth floor side elevation of the loggia area, reconsider the material. So it sounded like that was part of it. And then the first one, we would want to say consider either centering the ground floor retail restaurant entry or adding another to make it more symmetrical.
I think it's just create a more balanced entries for retail spaces.
Perfect.
And perhaps also better distinguish the residential.
Fourth
Oh,
point.
that's the fourth one.
Yeah, I think it's a fourth.
Yeah.
So to the lighting, I was just about to ask
Right.
about the lighting. Yep, I was just about to ask.
Well, no, this is another one in
Okay,
between.
okay.
To
Distinguish
better distinguish
residential.
between the residential entry and the retail entry.
Okay.
Then the following is lightening the fourth floor, the reading of the fourth floor on Broadway.
Because that's what I was just about to ask you about the lighting. Because I know
Not
we-
lighting, I know it's a little weird, but
Right.
just of the appearance
The
of how
appearance.
light or heavy it is, but yeah.
Yes, thank you. Eddie, can you share with us the process after, the commission?
After this, if the motion passes as written, and there's no issues with the development team on the items, They, when they come in for final revisions and construction drawings for approval, those changes will be incorporated. Staff will review it, make sure that it complies with the recommendations of the commission, and if so, issue an ATP for construction.
Okay.
Do we need to add in as one of those points that any final signage needs to be reviewed with staff? Does that need to specifically be a point or not?
We could put that in there. I think maybe we could, I'm trying to think of the whole motion here. We could say approve staff recommendation with the following amendments, and we talked about the 4 points.
I think they're 5.
Yes, yeah, there's more than 5.
Oh, boy.
Do you want me to read them to you?
Yeah, what do you have?
Okay. Follow up with staff to just distinguish residential and retail entries. Create more balanced entries for the retail spaces. Replace the panel siding with brick at the loggia. Return panel siding to the side of the rear mass. And reduce color saturation at the 4th floor.
I think the only one is it wasn't specifically necessary to replace it with brick at the loggia. I thought it was just reconsider the materials.
That's what I have.
But I was just being more specific.
You want
Right,
the
and
brick.
I don't think it's, just to be semantically accurate, I don't think it's reduced the saturation of the 4th floor, it's reducing the contrast, or creating a lighter appearance of the 4th floor.
Okay.
There's no color saturation issue.
Okay. Anything else that we need to put into the motion?
I mean, I kind of agree with Ann about, I prefer the brick, but I also agree that it should be reconsidering
It will be
the
reconsidered.
material
It will be.
there. So I don't finite about which way we want to word it.
And then after all that, we'll put final details to be reviewed at staff level. And that would take off everything else, the signage, the lighting.
Okay. Before we jump into it again, any other questions, any other comments, any more input?
I have one last question. So this is concept approval of the final design. So does it come, it doesn't come back to us now, we're just saying staff will do all the final stuff?
Right.
Okay.
And Eddie, you will let us know if it needs to come back to the commission, of course. Thank you. Okay. So, okay, thank you. So that I do not mess up the motions. And if you could you reread the motions one last time?
I think Eric has them written.
Okay, good.
Right?
Unless you want to tag team.
Approve staff recommendation with the following amendments, and I have a little bit different, take paneling on registered elevation, take paneling to the larger mass in the rear to make the mass more cohesive. On the 4th floor loggia, reconsider the material. Create a more balanced entry for 1st floor and distinguish entries between commercial and residential. And on the 4th floor, lighten the appearance, and I heard something, reduce color saturation.
Just strike that.
Strike
Just
the color saturation part.
Okay.
Say light and color.
Gotcha.
And then
I think
final
that Eric-
details to be reviewed at
Eric-
staff level.
For the first point, I think maybe it was the second point that you mentioned about the 4th floor. Just want to, you said reconsider the material, just make sure that what we're discussing is the inset panel on the return elevations
Right.
specifically.
And set panel and return elevation, great.
Great.
All right.
Would this be an appropriate time to say so moved?
All right.
Rather than repeating everything?
We just did.
Yep. Second.
Right.
Do I have a motion to approve what Eric just said?
That's what I.
I'm just gonna go through formality.
Move, I'm saying second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, yes, Commissioner June.
And members of the commission, I'm afraid I will have to excuse myself at this time from this part of the agenda. I am a member of the Ashburton Arc, as well as this property is right around the corner from my house.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much.
For the 3603 Sequoia Avenue. Okay.
Thank you. So next on, I'll wait till till our commissioner exits.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'll go through in more detail the first item.
Of course.
And then just highlight the differences on the second one, because it is basically the identical repetition.
Sure, and before you begin, I'll identify which properties we're talking about. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is 3603 Sequoia Avenue, which is in the Ashburton Historic District. And the proposal is to update, concept review, construction of two-story single-family house. The application is at Isaac, I cannot pronounce the last name. Bakayev. Thank you. Didn't want to say it wrong. And our staff who will be sharing the information with us is Mr. Eddie Leon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We have for your consideration 3603 Sequoia Avenue in the Ashburn Historic District. Is located here in the Ashburn neighborhood. Sequoia Avenue runs diagonally east-west, and the property site in question is an empty lot. The property came before the CHAP Commission in 2022 in February. The commission voted at that time to table the vote of the review of the project until the developer could address some issues concerning another project. The commission did make recommendations regarding the design and instructed the developer to work with staff to make changes that would make the two proposals at 3603 and 3605 and return to the commission. They wish to make the designs more unique and compatible with the varied architectural styles of the community. The applicant proposes to construct a new two-story residence on an empty lot. The house is designed as a contemporary colonial revival with a hipped roof. CHAP applied guidelines, Chapter 2, 2.1, guiding principles for new design, 2.2, site design, 2.3, scale and form, and 2.4.5, roofs. The site, as you see here, faces the north on both lots on Sequoia Avenue. The looking 2.1, guiding principles, new design, we see the design as presented and how it is situated between the existing structures on Sequoia Avenue. The applicant's proposal is to build a single-family home on an empty.
Will be located in the center of the lot, equidistant from the side yard property lines. The rear yard and front yard have comparable setbacks to the neighboring properties.
That's not me.
The proposed building is setback will match the neighboring properties.
Yeah.
I'm done.
It's fine. Nicole, it's okay, Commissioner. It's all right. And we were just trying to finish it off for you, so.
Make my job easy there.
No, it's okay. Oh, Eddie, continue. Go ahead.
The applicant's proposal is to build a single-family home on an empty lot. The proposed building will be a colonial revival wood frame structure that will blend into the fabric of the neighborhood, which is composed of buildings built in the early 20th century revival styles. It will be distinguishable from the surrounding historic buildings, particularly in the side and rear elevations where fenestration patterns are contemporary in design. The proposed new buildings will be located in the center of the lots, equidistant from the side yard property lines. Rear yard and front yards will have comparable setbacks to the neighboring properties. Proposed building is set back and will match the neighboring properties. The applicant proposes a main entry through a colonial revival style portico that is contemporary in design. Here we see the site as it is now, and the two similar structures, one at 03 and one at 05. The portico is centered on the facade, mirroring the neighbor's historic facade in the neighborhood. This is the structure as proposed. We see the two-story stone veneer facing and colonial-style portico. Scale and form. It will have similar floor-to-floor heights of the adjacent properties, and the proposed building has a massing that's nearly identical to that of the surrounding houses. The front elevation fenestration pattern is symmetrical in design, while the side and rear elevations have asymmetrical patterns of windows and doors opening, unlike the neighboring properties. These elevations are not highly visible and also serve as indication that the houses are not historic. The building will have similar proportions to the buildings across and around the street. Roofs, the proposed roof style is hipped and complements the roof styles of other buildings in the neighborhood. The proposed roof line is simple design and not ornate like the historic colonial revival buildings. The proposed building meets the CHAP design guidelines for new construction in terms of height, scale, and massing. The building meets setback requirements, design and material requirements. Hardy plank siding, stone veneer, front wall, wood door, metal clad wood windows on the facade, vinyl on the sides and rear, and composite trim elements. Staff recommends that the side elevations should be examined for additional window openings. Staff also recommends that the stone veneer continue and wrap around from on the side elevations. Finally, staff recommends that the additional detail to be added to the columns of the front portico. Neighborhood Architectural Review Committee for Ashburn has been provided the plans. They've expressed concerns about basement access, HVAC system requirements for their mechanical systems. Recommendation, concept approval of the new construction as the plans meet the CHAP design guidelines for new construction. CHAP recommends that the applicant continue the butterstone around the side elevations, about 3 to 5 feet from the front corners. Provide additional details about the front porch columns, and final plans to return to the full commission for review. Thank you.
Eddie, thank you. Do we have any questions from the commissioners to Eddie?
Yes.
The wrap with the 3 to 5 feet, is there something magical about the 3 to 5 feet?
It's just so that it does not appear to be just glued, stuck on one side. Just so so if it wraps around to the side of a couple feet or so, it appears like there's more
Because you
a
can
heavier
see,
design.
you would be able to see the entire side of the house from the street.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think if what you're getting at is that by wrapping it 3 to 5 feet, it seems somewhat arbitrary and
Right.
doesn't necessarily improve the concept that the material is real material is being used as the
Yes.
wall.
Yes.
It would really have to be tied into some sort of architectural detailing on the side elevation where the transition point made sense. So I agree with that point. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
So is the proposal also to do the stone for the entire front elevation? Is that what I'm looking at?
Correct. The stone is only being proposed for the front elevation at this time by the applicant.
For one property, the left-hand one, whichever that one is.
At 3603.
And do we have other properties within that block that are all stone like that? I just couldn't find them when I was looking through. Okay.
Correct. There are
Yes,
other properties
but
that are all stone finishes.
They go, clearly go around the side.
Okay.
Commissioners, do we have any other questions for Eddie?
In fact, it would appear that the house to the left, the existing house to the left of 3603 is stone all the way around.
Go ahead, go ahead. Ken.
So are both of these are being built and one of them will be stone and one won't? Is that that's
Correct.
the proposal? Okay, and we're approving both of them.
We're looking first right now, 3603.
Okay.
With the front porch portico, which is the one on the left.
Okay, are we separately going to look at 3605?
Yes, because
Okay.
they are separate properties. Mhm.
Okay. And thank you. At this point, we do have 4 names on our agenda. And let's go with Isaac.
Yes. Good afternoon,
And-
Commissioners.
Thank you. And Isaac, if you could you pronounce your entire name for us?
Sure, it's Isaac Bakayev.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, all. So I'm the owner, I'm the builder. It's my first time in this setting, so I'm not really sure how we're gonna, ask me questions. I'll try to address them the best that I can. Try to work very closely with the CHAP Association to try to really render the elevations and take their consideration and try to make it feasible for all parties to make it work. So, go ahead.
Isaac, I do have a question. I've, like many of the commissioners here, I've been in that community. Can you give us just the understanding or the reasoning why you're only doing the front brick facade of that building as opposed to doing the right and doing the left?
So, it's a very, very, so we've heard that comment, I think, previously, and it just financially speaking, that's, if we do that, we try to press out, fake stone, it just financially, there's no sense of us doing it at that point. Such a drastic difference between hardy plank siding versus doing the stone, just the labor, the stone itself, the prices are just really, really, really high, and economically, it's just not gonna make any sense for us to even build.
Can you confirm what kind of stone you are planning on using?
It would be, it was gonna be Eldorado stone. It's a stone, it's not a natural stone.
Cultured stone.
Cultured, yeah. So yes, so that's what we'll be using. But it's gonna be pretty much replicate the same thing you see to the left. I mean, it's almost, if you took 2 stones, put it next to each other, you probably couldn't even tell the difference.
Would you be open to using brick in lieu of that on that facade?
To us, doesn't matter. I'm only going off of what the association recommended. I'm piggyback off of that. But for us, from our standpoint, if you want to do 2 bricks, 2 stones, it doesn't matter.
Are you thinking about the cost effectiveness of the materials that brick might be?
Well, on that block, there's one stone house and the rest on that side of the street are brick houses, and then on the other side of the street, it's all stucco.
But the following by all the homes are stone.
We'll give you an opportunity to come up and speak. Have you put your name on the list? Okay, good, thank you.
So, like I said, we're open to us. It's really, as long as economically makes sense, we're open to whatever way to go about it.
Just had another question. I know we're going to consider the other ones separately, but was it just an economic decision too for this one to be stone and not the other one? Or
No,
is that
so the way we came to this point as far as stone, and the association recommended to try to blend in as possible as far as elevations go, since the left house has a stone, to just kind of make that transition, start of like, breaking stuff apart, to make it more of like a symmetrical look along the line of the street going, I guess, towards Callaway, I guess.
And the house on the other side is not
Is
stone?
brick,
It's
correct,
brick. Okay.
correct.
So one is brick and one is stone, okay.
There was one comment from staff about considering more openings on the one elevation that only has one window. Has that been discussed at all?
That is going up the stairs. That would be a picture window through the staircase, but it can, we can add windows if that's what, we can add that, sure. There's a living room, there's so on the first floor we can add it. On a second floor, only on
Part of what I'm wondering is kind of what we started talking about earlier, which is if we only recommend to wrap part of it, it really needs some kind of reason. And so if there's an ability to incorporate some kind of element, so there was a transition there where the stone isn't just kind of pasted on the front, but wraps, and there's some kind of reasonable terminus for it, it might be okay. It might appear better than just kind of stopping at the corner. I'm just trying to think through that.
Another window at the top, on the second.
Right, well, because the bottom elevation, right, if you're thinking about, oh, do we kind of arbitrarily wrap the corner with the front material, whatever it is, and stop at some point, I was just thinking a window or something like that might be able to help give you a definition of, okay, it makes sense, kind of stop it here.
It gives you a bay, potentially, a vertical bay that could be a transition point between one material and another.
Yeah, because
But it would be a
you already
significant
have
wrap.
that. You have that opportunity, I think, in the upper elevation on that side, right, where you kind of have a point that could make sense. I was just trying to think if there might be an opportunity to do the same thing on the other side.
I don't know, I have a question. In terms of like this, when we talk about staff recommending this whole wrapping, I think aesthetically, I think it's not going to look right aesthetically. I think what I've seen a product is with the hardy plank, you can maybe beef up that corner with either different color perhaps, or it's a hardy plank like outside corner that would make a separation between where the brick or the stone would be and this corner. So it's going to give you a whole new look to the way when you're looking from the side. And as far as adding the windows, it would not be a problem to do a window on the first floor. On the second floor, it's going to be a bedroom. It's going to be a window in the front, window on the side. Where you're going to put your bed, that might be a little bit of a problem.
Has stucco been considered as an option, considering the amount in the neighborhood?
Again, stucco, and it just economically, if we introduce that, we price that as well at the very, very beginning stages of this concept, and it just economically, it's maybe only on the front, but as far as the three sides, we can just, it's really, really, really expensive.
As a comparison to the cultured stone is a more cost-effective option than the stucco?
Yes, yes. A lot more effective, yes.
Well, I think when you say stuck, I think we have to put some clarifications around that. So I think that if you were talking about EFS,
That's what I'm thinking of.
that's cheaper than masonry
No,
veneer. Real stucco is more expensive, but EFS system is cheaper than masonry veneer construction. But I think that the problem is the patterning in the neighborhood and the way that the houses across the street are all stucco and kind of Spanish revival, and then these are none of that. So it would be arbitrary to change the material just because. So I think the materials are really derivative of the architectural style, and maybe that may be one of our struggles is that that's what's common throughout the neighborhood, and that's what we're kind of picking wallpaper irrespective of the style of the house, and maybe that's one of the challenges that we have here.
Isaac, I was going to ask you, with the design that you shared with us for 3603, in the Ashburn neighborhood, would this be one of the homes that is like super unique, where they have the facade in the front but not the facade on the side? Or there are other houses that mimic that design as well, where the facade is in the front, but on the side you don't see the rocks?
The design would be unique, but it also would stand out as being contemporary of its time and not trying to look too much like an actual historic house, but just a house that is compatible to the historic setting.
But I guess that's the point, right? I think the new construction, we understand that's a given, that it's going to be new in comparison to the historic context. But that's kind of the effort of the guidelines, is to not let the new construction stick out, right? So this will stick out. Like this will, if you look at the street, and I'm sure, you're a homeowner, you knew this was a historic district, you drive down the street, there's very distinct architectural, buildings there, and there's a lot of diversity of building types and material types there. So I don't know if it's an argument to say, hey, the building should be stone, the building should be brick, the building should be hardy plank or so forth. My position still is that you have to look at the existing context. The existing context right now has buildings that have articulation. Like, it's not just a monopoly house. All these buildings have sort of thoughtful articulation of a time period. All different time periods, probably all different styles of architecture, all different types of materialities. I think one needs to look at that and go, I have to be respectful to that. So if I'm going to build a new building here, it needs to respond to that in some way, shape, or form, either in articulation, either in materiality, either in massing and design. And my position is that you're probably not driven by the articulation. I mean, I don't think the guidelines say you have to articulate the building exactly the way the next door neighbor is, but you have to kind of respond to something and say, hey, I need to match up to certain standards. So if you look at the facades of all these buildings on Sequoia Avenue, there's not a building that says, I'm the material on this side, and then the wallpaper changes on this side, and the wallpaper changes on this side, unless there's articulation. Now, if you see that there's some buildings there that have certain levels of articulation where a three-dimensional element pops out of the house, there's a part of the building that starts to change. And then, yes, there's times when materials change. In this case, you have a very, very, the nicest way to say it is it's a dumb box. If you have a dumb box and you have a pure form as what a dumb box would be, you kind of argue that the materiality needs to be cohesive. Because there's a three-dimensional element floating in space, floating in the neighborhood, So it needs to read all the way around. I'm not saying it should be stone all the way around. I'm not saying it should be ephes all the way around. I don't think, and to the point of earlier, we had a conversation about materiality. There's not a distinction of what kind of material you should use there per se, as it sounds like. But I think it needs to have a cohesiveness. So whatever you choose, if it's ephes all around. If it's brick all around. If it's stone all around, particularly because it's a pure form. Now, if you decide, hey, you know what, I'm going to change the floor plan, I'm going to pop out here, I'm going to do this, because if you study the floor plans on that street, and you've taken that responsibility to build on a historic street, you should look at that and go, oh, that's an opportunity for me to change materials because I'm thinking about cost, right? So you can still think about cost, but you can do it thoughtfully. So my position to this, and everybody knows this, is that I think there should be if you're going to keep the plan as it is and keep the form as a dumb box, it needs to be thoughtful with a simple, clear consistency of materiality, whatever it's decided to be, is my position. Unless you incorporate and introduce more formal articulation.
I think my only response to that would be is that this particular part of town, okay, I've been doing this for again, I'm not an expert in CHAP by no means, but I've been doing this for 20 years. I've done work all over Baltimore City. This particular section of Ashburn, there are so many, and I hear where you're coming from. There's so many different types of homes. What we try to do is try to incorporate the financial aspect of it, try to do the best that we can to give something back to the community that will fit well with 2022. And in our opinion, this was, like I said, with just the price of lumber and everything else, I can give you what you want, like that EF is just, example, we price it out. It's a significant difference in cost to do all three sides. Again, I'm not sure how it works with you guys, with the commissioners in terms of helping us move forward. Obviously you guys have the final say, but from our standpoint, we are trying to do the best that we can to take all the parts of throughout the community and try to make it work.
I think that it should not be a mashup. It should be a distilled composition that reflects, so the materials should reflect the choice of form. So if you wanted to simplify the building and make it look more like the things across the street and use EFS on all four sides, that's an option. If you wanted to make it look if you wanted to kind of follow the pattern language of the houses that are all wood siding around the neighborhood, then you could use all wood siding on all 4 elevations. I think our point is that there are no other precedent in the neighborhood for a primary material and a secondary material in, like that. What Capel's saying is that sometimes there might be a bay window that comes out, or a dormer window that comes out of a masonry house that has wood, but it's never that elevations change materials. And so you could choose to use a more cost-effective material on all 4 sides, but your form should follow that, you know. And there are so many different, we've been looking at the Google 3D maps of the neighborhood, which are really helpful in understanding just the pattern language and the diversity and where these different forms show up. You know, I think you have a lot of latitude there, but I think we're all very uncomfortable by the fact that this is a very simple form with 2 materials on it that seems to take no cues from the existing context.
Would hardy plank on all 4 sides be acceptable or no?
I think that if you were to look at the other houses that are clapboard, that are simple forms in the neighborhood, there might be some precedent for that. Perhaps if you put a porch like you did on this one, but you want to look a little bit more closely at the houses a couple blocks away to pick something that, and I know your architect is capable of this, you know, to pick something that might be more contextualized.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I agree. I think our basic issue is the change, the drastic, or not the drastic, the
abrupt.
Sudden,
abrupt, yes, thank you, change in material. I agree. I think given the multitude of materials and architecture seen in the neighborhood, that considering a more cost-effective material that's consistent around all 4 sides would be a viable option. But what really kind of gets it is, you know, you look, you see dormers, you see porches, you see bay windows, you see a little bump out on the side or something like that. And I understand the cost effectiveness of wanting to build to as close to similar as possible, right? Because that's how you reduce costs. And I appreciate that on one, you know, there's a kind of a full porch, on the other there's a smaller. So I guess, you know, on this one, is there something else that you can do to help just make it a little less like a box, and then you can have a more cost-effective material all the way around? And for the most part, you know, 95% of it is still the same, so you have that consistency, but you have just enough kind of there in the front area that differentiates so it doesn't look like they're twins.
And Isaac, after you, you know, share your comment or your response, I want to give some of the community opportunity to come up and speak.
Sure.
Okay. Go right ahead, finish.
Well, a lot of the challenge in this particular development is that the lots are so tight, and we're literally working with inches through the zoning process. If I'm only this, again, I've been doing this for a very long time, but not in the CHAP. I'm going to be very transparent about what I know and what I do not know. Okay, I'm taking all the feedback from the association, meaning that these are the people that actually live. This is the way I'm thinking and my thought process. These are the people that live there, and they have to go by this every single day and look at this house. So I'm taking their information from when we met, whatever it was, a year ago when this concept started through. We had the meeting, we discussed about what we're proposing, because ultimately these are the people that will be living there and looking at this every single day. So my goal is, from a builder perspective, is to really please the community, not necessarily the whole entire city of Baltimore. That's the way that I'm thinking. I might be wrong. I'm just, you know, but these are the people that are going to be living there walking the streets, walking their dogs, whatever, taking walks, and looking at these 2 structures every single day. So my idea is to we met, we discussed, and that's kind of where we are as of today.
Gotcha.
So from this point,
it'll be great to hear, because like if they say they want 4 sides of stone, you're ready to please.
I mean, listen, look, listen, we all know at the end of the day, numbers have to make sense for us. And if it means for us to walk away and call it a day, hey, that's what we'll do. For us, I know what I can deliver on my end, but I'm not going to be breaking my back for 6 months and not get, paid for my, this has been going on for now 2.5, whatever, 3, I don't know how long it's been going on at this point. So it has to make we'll definitely accommodate and work with the community, but at the end of the day, it has to make sense on our behalf to, nobody works for free.
Isaac, before I bring the community up, I gotta give Peter opportunity to
Sure.
speak.
Yeah, I'm actually quite interested to hear what the community has to say, but I just wanted to express my agreement with everyone else so far. I mean, I'm looking at 3506 Grantley right around the corner. I mean, it is the house you've designed with a gable roof rather than a hip, but it's just all frame. It's got the same portico, 3 bays across the front. But I agree completely. I think consistency is very important within your specific design because there are so many options to look at. But I would very much like to hear from the community.
Commissioner, thank you, Peter. Isaac, thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Please give us your full name and feel free to comment.
Thank you. My name is Dawn Taylor, and I'm the co-chair for the CHAP committee in Ashburton. Good afternoon, commissioners and chairman. So yes, it has been quite a process for us. We have been in front of Isaac and his brother, I guess, over the last year in regards to these lots, and have expressed at first a lot of dissatisfaction and the cookie cutterness of the opportunity on Sequoia, which is a very historical block. And we expressed that at the last meeting, I believe at the hearing, the Zoom meeting. But for us, we would love it to have the 3 sides surrounded by stone or brick, as are many of the other homes in the community. But we're also trying to be compromising, I guess, if you will, to some extent, or consistent with helping the developer to meet their goals so we can come to a happy medium. And seeing them on screen like this certainly does show some of the shortcomings of the design that we would prefer to see, as all of the other houses in the community are very unique, as what were mentioned. But he did come to us May 12th, presented some things that we were very unhappy with, and I do give him credit for changing a lot of what he was planning to do and incorporating a porch on the front of the one house and, making them different. And we did discuss the hardy plank on the sides, but then it's just the one window, and that in itself is very lacking. I don't know what other word to use. He did describe the windows that were going to be clad windows, and we wanted to have those with the grids that represent some of the other homes in that vicinity right there, and the stairs. And one of my chat members can express more on that in regards to how the elevation, walking straight up into the property versus a stagnant type of stairwell on the entrance. So we have concerns, and the lots have been sitting there for some time. I would prefer to see one big house there, built the right way with all the wonderful materials. So just wanted to share that, we're looking for your guidance, because we're kind of laymen in this process. But we know we do live in the community, we love the community, and we do know the uniqueness and historical basis of the community. Thank you so much.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for him?
Yes.
Oh, feel free to come.
He's another committee member.
We had some questions for. Would you like any questions? Sure. Go right back up. Come back up. Come back up. Come back up. Thank you.
Sure. Question?
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I had the impression that you all were looking for a specific brick stone pattern based on the fact that the first house in the block is stone and then it's brick, although the preceding houses before the stone house are brick. I just wanted to ask, do you really feel that the pattern of the primary facade material is more important than having the same material on all sides? And I can make that question, I can rephrase it.
Well, I know what you mean.
Okay.
In other words, the look from the front, is that more important to us as it blends with the other properties? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like-
Versus having all hardy plank around the whole house?
Right.
I think we do prefer the stone look or the brick look, but, you know, not knowing how that blend, how that's going to be attractive with the hardy plank on the sides. It's hard to visualize that. I don't know if there's any example of that. Is there, Isaac? That we could see it?
Yeah, it's a very common, I've pulled up a house on Roland Avenue that I drive by all the time that has it, and it speaks of a developer property that was built recently.
Well, I mean, I think that what
so we
the
could-
challenge
In a
is
quality
that,
way?
Well,
no,
no,
houses are
no,
seen in perspective. And
yeah.
so looking at
Right.
houses in elevation, or looking at any building in elevation is, does not represent how we experience the street realm, right? We experience, particularly in freestanding houses, it's experienced in 3D, and that's what Kapow was saying. So, but I think Sequoia, I guess, is more of a monumental street, and so everything was brick or stone, whereas on the secondary streets that we're looking at in our 3D, you see a more mix. So anyway, that was just a question. I was curious.
Yeah, I think overall there was a desire to have what's there now, but we were told it could only be on the front more than the entire side. So that was kind of, well, maybe our compromise, but I'm not sure how the rest of the committee and the others in the community feel about it. I have a stone house on Sequoia myself, so I'm a little biased about stone.
Thank you, thank you. Come on. Welcome and thank you, and please introduce yourself to the committee.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Gaylord, and I'm also a member of CHAP as well as an Ashburton member, and I've lived in the community for 21 years. And I'm glad to hear what you guys are stating. And the CHAP committee was based on, we were giving some guidelines based on certain things. And when we looked at the design, we didn't like them. We still don't like them, but if we got to accept them, we base things on that. And that was the first thing as far as with the facade on the front. They say, if we got to accept these, then let's at least keep it in cohesion of what is on Sequoia. So that was where we came and talked to Isaac and say, okay, Isaac, if we got to accept these designs, then we at least want them to look like they're not two robots, because that's what they look like. And we're being honest. And that's how we see it, still see it, but at least we're getting some compromise that when you have a stone home here, you somewhat have something that even though it's gonna look like you said, a box, it's gonna have some compromise. And the same thing with the brick, compromise. Now, in reference to Ann's comment, Miss Ann Powers' comment, a hardy plank would not be acceptable because you're talking about two boxes with hardy plank. It would be different if the home on 3601 was a dormant tile stone home, and then maybe hardy plank would be more acceptable because it's in a line and elevation. When you look at it, it doesn't look like you got a nice dormant home. You got a box, hardy plank, a box, hardy plank, and then you got another dormant style home. So that's what we're looking at. We've been around here for years, and granted, Isaac just came and he's been blessed to have those lots. Other members would have loved to know they could buy this because there are a lot of members in the neighborhood would love to have bought those homes and do more to what in line with what we have there now. But we weren't fortunate. But like I say, it goes back to what we've gotten in front of us and then say, okay, we want to move forward because we don't want to hold them up, but at the same time, we don't want just anything thrown up there. So that's how we're looking at this, is from a standpoint that we're not going anywhere, and we just don't want it to be just look like somebody just threw something up there and it has no cohesion, no authentication to what Sequoia represents. Because as you saw, just like most streets, just like if you look at Hampton, you got the main street that goes where Han is. It represents them, the styles of homes. Even though you have a lot of buildings there, those those storefronts and things, they still keep certain things in place. They just don't throw things up there. And that's the same concept we're trying to do with Sequoia. We're not just trying to have something just thrown up there and somebody pays $600,000 for it. So the steps, okay. Where in each of the homes on there, Sequoia, have like 4 steps and then a walkway and then 4 steps to that. So it's not where you're coming from the curve and walking all the way up the steps to a porch. And in its design, that's what it looks like. I'm not sure if that's what it actually represents. But in all the homes on Sequoia, on that side, do have like an elevation of so many steps coming in, and then a walkway, and then another about 4 steps to represent to the porch, not just coming seem like from the ground up. And one other thing that I noticed is that all the homes in Ashburn have a fireplace. These homes don't. That was one of the things we did talk about in the design at 3502 that was omitted in the end. But that was one of the things we would like to have. But we're just doing some compromise, but just some cohesion in what the homes do look like on Ashburn and Silburn and what they represent. And we would at least like to keep that type of authentication in the homes. But like I said, again, it's what we have in front of us, and then based on the compromise of what we said, okay, let's move forward. We can't have everything, but let's try to get as much as we can in the designs of what are put before us.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, do we have any questions that we'd like to share? Okay. State your full name.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Lawrence Campbell, and I've been in Ashburton since 1973. And so these 2 houses on Sequoia are a major challenge to us because the lots have been empty for quite a while. What we prefer is to have a house that looks like the rest of the neighborhood. Not the stucco on the other side of the street, but something with brick and or stone. My proposal was to take the 2 lots and combine them and make it 1 lot, and then be able to put a good house there, which would match in with the neighborhood. We've had multiple discussions with the developer. We've, negotiated, but quite frankly, we're not 100% satisfied with what we got. And so the comments that you brought forth are comments that we see as well. We've had other issues with the prior home that they built on 3502 Cedardale, in which we were very concerned about that house, and the builders did not comply with the process that we had asked to be done. And whenever Mr. Eddie Leon met with his brother, there were things in that house that still are not satisfied, and the owner ends up getting fined because of the things that took place. So there's not a lot of satisfaction with this particular builder. Like Brother Jerry said, we have come to a compromise. But the issues are, if we're living in a historic neighborhood, we want to keep it historic. We want to go by the guidelines. We've read the book. I was listening to a young lady as she was going through the new guidelines for the recommendations. I've read through the new guidelines, and I've accepted what the new guidelines are saying. The issues that we have, if I can just be curt and to the point, this does not meet what we see is compatible with our neighborhood.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for Mr. Lawrence? Thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Eddie, as before, could you go to the final page? Before we even get into any motions, I'd like to table the discussion for 3603 amongst the commissioners just to see, after looking at the recommendations, after listening to the community and also the developer, what furthermore would you all like to share?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And this might need to go back to the developer. The comment from the community folks about how most of the lots on that street kind of have basically a set of stairs and then a set of stairs at the porch. From what I can see in the photos that were submitted, it looks like maybe these lots are a little flatter. Can you, I guess, clarify that? Is it
We can definitely, once we get to the grading aspect of it, we can definitely, that's not a problem to incorporate that's not a problem at all.
Okay.
It's just a matter of, that's not a problem at all.
Isaac, I wanted to ask, because I didn't think of this until it was mentioned in this room. Have you all ever considered doing just one home that would encompass the conversation that we had here today, where facade is pretty much all the way around, or the chimney, and also the uniqueness of it being, like the rest of the homes in the neighborhood?
Well, there's a couple of things, I understand a lot of times on the other side, people throw numbers around 600,000, 700,000, I do this for a living, okay? I know how much these things cost. I know what, we just had a challenge with another property that there's not a lot of new construction being built per se in those neighborhoods. So it's really, really hard to even really put a number. And again, from my experience, you never know what kind of appraiser I'm going to get on the back end. I might have a great buy for 600,000, but the appraisers might only see it's only worth 400,000. So here we are discussing the stone, the stucco and the brick, and it's all wonderful and great, but I'm taking that risk, and it has to come to the compromise. Whether the community is going to say, okay, well, look, this has been sitting here for however many years, this empty lots, number one, or I'm taking the guidelines from the CHAP, what CHAP is giving us for 2022, and we're trying to incorporate the best package possible to hopefully accommodate everybody. We can't have our cake and ice cream, okay? So either we can work together and make this a beautiful process. There were some hurdles in the past. I believe that we have overcome those hurdles at this point. It's a new chapter now. And we're just here to work together. And we're given, from our angle, obviously, I'm sure you guys can understand, it's all obviously a numbers game. And I've done my research, I've done my homework on the brick, on all three sides, because it was one of the comments. And I said, right away told them, I said, it's just not possible. It's just economically, by doing that, will not pull. We're just going to be working for free at that point. So do the best that we can to incorporate all of the materials that are available and put the best product at the end to what we're dealing with.
I have a question, if that's all right.
Sure.
I noticed that between the two properties, one of them is 49 feet wide and one lot is 54 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how it's zoned? I mean,
Yes.
that's according to the property lines now?
Yes.
What I'm thinking is, it seems like, I think what we're all looking for here is a way to find houses that fit in with the neighborhood better and seem to be of high quality. And I think that, it's possible that, and as some of my fellow commissioners have stated, it's not just the materiality and the kind of pasted on brick and stone in the front, whereas when we know we can see all the elevations together, that's troublesome. I think it's also just the flatness of of all of the facades and the way that the windows are arranged on the side facades that isn't as compatible and doesn't seem as high quality as maybe some the neighbors would like to see. I'm wondering if by evening out the lot sizes, if that's possible, you could take advantage of some of that extra width to introduce some articulation to the side facades.
I'm going to be honest.
Rather than put a different material in the front.
We would have to go through a variance, and that's a whole nother ball game that we're just not going to get involved in. We're not going to do it. I
personally, when I look at it, I think that it better rather than put money into changing the material of the front facade, I would rather see money put into more windows on the side facades that have a more deliberate arrangement. And then therefore, when you look at the building from the oblique, from the corners, as you experience them along up and down the street, that it would look less like a developer house. So I would recommend considering that.
We can incorporate that. I think that's doable. I think it's doable.
So, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I have a question
Thank you,
too,
sir.
because we've had this conversation in previous meetings. When you purchased a property, were you aware that it was a historic community?
Well, my brother's the one who started the process, and so it's me and my older brother, and I'm more like the back end guy. I usually don't get involved with the acquisitions and stuff. When we bought the property, it was not disclosed as it was a CHAP property. We only found out after the fact when we started doing the actual research looking to apply for this. So, because we've done houses on Callaway, and I would have thought that because the Callaway is literally right around the corner, so I would have imagined I've done a couple houses on Callaway. And I never had anything from CHAP. So I mean, I can take responsibility saying I did do my due diligence, I did do my homework, but when we bought the property, it was never disclosed to us that it was in CHAP district. So when we got it, we're good.
No, we appreciate your answer because this is that question feeds into a larger conversation we're having as a commissioner, so it's not a direct.
Eddie, you about to say
If
something?
I could address that, one side of Callaway is inside the district, the other side is not.
Understood. What I wanted to do, and just table this for the commissioners, we have talked about both properties, yet for the record on our agenda, we haven't talked about 3605. And I thought it might just be appropriate, Eddie, I don't know if you'd like to just jump into, just real quickly, what's needed for that one, since we've talked about both and heard from the committee, from the community.
Thank you. Commissioners, next for your consideration, 3605 Sequoia Avenue, same developer, same site location in the Ashburton neighborhood, same parameters as background of previously having come before the commission, same basically same form of the structure of the two-story new construction. The differences are, as noted, the front facade is being treated with a brick treatment, and there is a full porch being stretched across the front facade of this property to give it a similar appearance to other full front porch properties in the Ashburton neighborhood. The same consideration is being given by the staff about continuing some of the brick element around the sides on both left and right. Same roof. Also the same materials with the exception of the brick are being proposed in this property. Recommendations, concept approval for new construction as the plans meet the CHAP design guidelines for new construction. Staff recommends the applicant provide additional details about the front porch columns. Continue the brick veneer around the side front elevations, 3 to 5 feet from the front corners, and final plans are returned to the full commission for review. Thank you.
Eddie, just for my eyes, when I looked at it, on the left and the right, is there going to be brick on the side too, or is that not same?
The recommendation is for the same.
Same, thank you, sir.
As in the stone and veneer on the other property.
Appreciate it. So out of respect for the process, commissioners, I know we've talked about the properties, but do we have any questions related to 3605 for Eddie?
Less a
Go
question,
right ahead, Peter.
but a comment that we hadn't really talked about the porch at all. And one thing I'd like to see on the porch, the dimensions on it, it's only 5 foot deep, which just, it's not how historic porches are built. Typically they're much deeper than that. So if you're going to put a porch on, I'd rather to see that a little bit deeper so it's a more usable space that jives more with the early 20th century porches on the block.
Peter, thank you. Out of respect for the process, once again, do we have any community members who'd like to speak?
his brother knew it was a CHAP district
state your name
because,
again.
I'm sorry, my name is Jerry Gaylord.
Thank you, Jerry.
His brother knew it was a CHAP district because the bill they did on 3502. That's all I want to comment.
Understood. Thank you. Eddie, can you take us back to the recommendations again? Oh, so commissioners, I like to make sure that we, for this conversation here, is there any conversation we'd like to have amongst ourselves before we get into making any type of motion?
So I think maybe just for the purpose of the record that we would probably have the same concerns as what we stated for 3603, which is about the materiality being consistent. And then, this one has the benefit of have the porch all the way across, I think helps to distinguish it. So it's not just kind of a box feeling, but I think probably the same, if I can speak, if my other commissioners agree with me about the same comments about, especially the one side that only has one window, and those other kinds of comments would also apply to this property.
Catherine, thank you. Any other comments?
Question for staff.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
It says that it's looking for concept approval and then final plans to return to full commission for review.
Correct.
Sometimes we always talk about where it's massing scale proportion as the first review and
massing
the
scale.
final details. Is this for massing scale proportion?
Correct.
It is. So this is like the first concept review. I just want to make sure there's a clarity there.
Commissioners, for point of clarity, just for the record, are we saying the same thing as far as uniformity around the building?
I agree that the comments for the second property are the same as the comments for the first property.
Sir,
Good
thank you.
concerns.
Thank you.
So is that with that question, you're saying whatever we vote on today, it's kind of encompassing both? We're just going to lump them in as one vote?
Because, I think for the record, because we have a developer for two properties, two addresses, and they are saying in the recommendations a couple of unique things, I would like for us to do one each. I would, just for the record, so that we do not confuse the two down the road or in history of our minutes. So, Eddie, if you could, can you take us back to 3603?
Gladly.
And also to confirm, right now it's deliberation time, not motion time?
Right, yes, sir, it's deliberation time. So we're back at 3603, giving the commission opportunity to deliberate before we make a motion on 3603 Sequoia Avenue, new construction. And as we see the staff recommendations, recommends that the applicant, 1, continue the butterstone around the side elevations, 3 to 5 feet from the front corners, provide additional details about the front porch columns, and final plans to return to the full commission for review. Wanted to put that on the floor for everybody to talk about.
I just want to echo what everybody's already said, but I just am really uncomfortable with not having the same material on all, at least the 3 sides, if it's not on the back.
Yes, ma'am.
And, so I don't know how to, it may be inappropriate for us to get into the cost of the development and stuff like that. And I know he's saying that he can't do it because of the cost, but is that inappropriate for us to ask what the difference is in those costs?
Eric, is it appropriate for us to ask about the cost?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So can we get that information about the difference in cost between doing it on all 3 sides?
I'm going to be honest. My brother's the one who deals with that. I mean, we've talked about, I'm not prepared to give it an answer right now. Is that okay? I just don't want to say something that I don't know.
Well, Isaac, remember, if you look at the bottom, it says final plans to return to the full commission for review. So if there's an opportunity for you to do it, the commissioner, you just request, or if there's an opportunity for you to share with us price, then we welcome that.
I would be interested in
just to, without getting, again, because there's specifics of the brick. So just to give you an idea, okay, my price, just to give you an idea, just so we can compare more or less. My price, we're doing a new construction house now, okay, not on CHAP. Labor material for just siding on all 4 sides, okay, labor materials cost me about $7,500. We got a quote from actually not so expensive masonry guy just for the brick. Again, the cost of the brick also differentiates solid brick, hollow brick, all, we're just talking about like for our purpose, okay? We're going to the cheapest brick. To do on all three sides from the bottom all the way to the top roof line, we're looking at about $45,000 to $50,000 for three sides. For three sides. So we're talking about the extra $40,000 that we'll never recoup in this development, never. Just how drastic the difference is.
So $40,000 total, not per side, but to do all three sides is 40,000, and to do one side is 15,000, 20,000?
It's less because it's scaffolding, it's different. It's just, there's not as much space to cover because there's so many windows, whereas on the side, it's not that many windows. I'm only basing it off the drawing that you guys see in front of me, because you see on one side, it's practically all brick or all stone. So there's a significant difference. And honestly, we don't do brick and stone. That's a little bit more of a higher end custom developers. So, but when we start pricing these things out, that's why we try to find the right median to incorporate hardy plank with the stone, because the price is just so significantly different between one and the other.
I understand. I mean, but you're building in a neighborhood that does have that higher end custom look to it. It already is there, so.
I understand, but from my angle is, like I said, I can give you what you guys want, right? But there's a factor in all this, that when I go to sell the property and it all goes down to the appraiser, and I've had this situation many times in my career. I have one number in my head and the appraiser comes in and says, you know what? The value just doesn't support it. It's a $400,000 house. So here I've done everything you guys have wanted to, and at the end, you can also say, you know what if it doesn't? What if, I understand it, but from my experience, I'm not willing to take that risk and that gamble and play that card.
I understand that. I just would like to see the difference in cost. So you're saying it would
It's
be
significant.
45,000. You keep saying
Yeah,
significant,
yeah.
but I would like to know if it's 45,000 for all three sides or four sides, what is the cost for the one side? What's that difference? What's the delta?
Because on the front, it's really not that much. You have a lot of windows on the front, on the bottom, and on top. Yeah, I think I want to say we got a quote for the stone part, not the brick, the stone part. I think we're like $8,500.
So we're talking about 30,000 difference.
Yes.
So, we certainly as a commission understand where you're coming from, and we've seen this across many projects. Even for the new commissioners here, many of us have experience in historic neighborhoods and preservation and that. So we're sympathetic to the challenge of trying to make a living. But that said, we also have to balance that with protecting our historic resources. And so I certainly don't want you to feel like we're being cavalier about saying, oh, it just needs to be this, no compromise, no matter what it costs you. Because from what I have heard from my fellow commissioners, no one here has that attitude. But at the same time, we are charged to protect the historic resources and community in Baltimore. And so I understand that this is kind of like growing frustration pains because it's out of the element, and maybe some earlier parts of the process didn't go as smoothly, and so that makes maybe this part of the process more stressful. So I just wanted to say that and acknowledge. I appreciate that you're now trying to really work with the community and get these things resolved. And we heard expressed by the community they're appreciative of that too. So I do want to highlight those positive aspects where, we're getting into kind of the, what are the things we want to change. But I do want to remind you that thank you for the great strides from where you started working with the community. And we want to continue to see that relationship grow. So I think you've had a lot of feedback here today, and as another preservation professional who also practices architecture, I know it can be hard sometimes to evaluate, well, do you do X versus B? I may not end up with kind of a payoff or a higher value in the end, but that's balanced with knowing where you're building and the community you're building in, and just kind of what the expectations are in that community. So of course, if you take the same exact house and plop it in a different neighborhood, it might be completely fine. But at the end of the day, this is the neighborhood where we are. And so that has certain expectations around it that are completely different than maybe if you took the same thing and plopped it somewhere else, even if it had the exact same value. So that's really the perspective that we're coming from. So we understand, but I think we all agree there's some more work to be done. And having some of this information about some of the cost differences and things like that, I think can help us understand where you're coming from with those and maybe help the community understand as well, so that then the consideration can be made, okay, well, yes, we prefer stone everywhere or brick everywhere, but it's more or less important to have a consistent material. So if that means we really need to look at siding everywhere, that evaluation can happen a little easier. And then you're more comfortable too, because you're not just trying to pull numbers out of your back pocket. So I would encourage you to try to pull some of that information together to bring with you for the next hearing, whenever we get to whatever that is.
Can I also make another comment?
Of course you can.
And hi. One of my suggestions too, I know you have brought up value. Once you finish construction, what will you be able to sell the property for? And you also mentioned, the appraisal value. I think if you present your plans to an appraiser, I've done this before, I'm a nonprofit developer, ask them what the value is. I mean, they're essentially looking at what your design is and what you're proposing and comparing it with what's going on in the market, just to confirm that you are going in the right direction in providing a product that's going to be marketable within this community. That'll save you a lot of money, and it's kind of like a touch point, given that you're at the conceptual stage now. I mean, it's a great way to just make sure that you're not spending money unnecessarily if you're not going to get the value that you're expecting at the end of the day.
So as far as from us, so again, I think that in any resolution to any problem in life in general, you have to be very, very transparent, okay? You have to look at your position, you have to look at my position. When we particularly look at this specific community, all right, I'm under assumption, again, I correct me, Ms. Powell, you mentioned something about, you said primary and secondary roads. So does that mean that within the historical district, you're saying that I cannot look at the model on, let's say, Cedardale or Dorchester and take that and put on Sequoia? We have to strictly stick to what the Sequoia is? Is this correct?
Well, I mean, I was actually asking the neighborhood what their opinion is of that specific question, because they're more intimately familiar with the neighborhood. And what I heard them say clearly was that they put the emphasis on sticking with the Sequoia Street typologies only. I'm not sure I put the same value on that, but I don't live in the neighborhood, so I respect that was the value statement that they made.
I see.
But yes, I mean, like, I looked at the aerial and I could see that, like, in Cedardale, there are lots of houses that seemed to fit in. So maybe that's an open dialogue you could have with the community. Because from an economical standpoint, if you could find a solution, maybe that would be the compromise. But I really heard them say that they liked the stone and brick of Sequoia to be put forward, so I don't know.
Okay, so from us, the way we analyze this, once we found out that this is a historical district and this is what we have to go by, we looked around all throughout the community. In this particular Ashburton area, every street you turn, there's stone, there's stucco, there's brick, there's siding, it's all over the place. And if I recall, I think it was just recently included into the CHAP district, I think not too long ago, right? I'm not 2007. 2007. So whenever let's say I've done stuff in Randallstown, it's in the county, okay, where you're strictly in a Flagstone community. I mean, you look down the street and there's no way you cannot negotiate anything, because in here you have so many moving parts. So my angle is to just try to kind of please everybody, but make it work. And from the community standpoint, I think that we do bring a good value. We going to develop this piece of land that's going to attract good quality people that will bring to your community. You know, that's again, this is just me from my angle. So again, taking all these elements and trying to put it together, this is, you know, what we came up with. As far as adding the windows, I think to break that, I think that's very much doable.
I think that's going to add value to the properties too, in terms of the sale,
Sure.
the appeal. And you mentioned something like in a bedroom, it's hard to find where's the bed wall if there's a window. I'm looking at your floor plans and I see opportunities for, it just seems like, you know, you go into a bedroom and you're in a single family house, you've got space on all sides of you, and you go into a room and it has one window facing in one direction. It's a lost opportunity. If you have the two side windows, it's just your perception of that space is going to be, it's a higher value and it's going to be more appealing. And if it is thoughtfully located on the facade, it will look better from the outside. So I think that being sensitive to the economic realities of your business, it's really a question of where can we put the money to get the better product.
And I would just like to add to that, I mean, I think that all of these suggestions that we're making would actually improve the value. And I would be interested in knowing what you're thinking the houses are going to be valued afterwards.
So
what your comparables are.
I'm dealing with as a matter of fact, right now with the project. Okay, it's by Mount St. Joseph off of Frederick Road. Okay, the problem oftentimes, you see, our specialty is little infilled lots. That's what we specialize in. The challenge with that is that in Baltimore City especially, there's not so many comparables of new construction houses. So the challenge I'm dealing with as we speak right now, we built a house, okay, and we're trying to sell it. We're trying to get appraised for $450,000. I'm going back and forth with the guy right now, literally as we speak. He says, find me comps of new construction. I can't. There are not any. And appraiser is not willing to risk his license to put on the line and write something up to the bank to saying, well, this is, you know, they also have that very thin line to where they can stick out and say, okay, yes, it's new construction. I have a garage. I have a big piece of land. It's a corner lot. So I'm seeing this in the city. It's really, really hard for appraisers to justify that. So I have to kind of take that into consideration from my experience. You know, I would rather do row houses all day long because there's comparables all over the place. But whenever you touch a new construction, new piece of land, and just like you guys have mentioned, as far as from the appraisal standpoint, whether it's the brick, whether it's the golden toilet, it doesn't matter. They go by the square footage and they go by the comparables. That's it. You and I can appreciate, and believe me, I love stucco. I would love to do the whole house in stucco. Okay, it look beautiful. I can give you a product that will blow you away. But to the appraiser, he's going to look at it, it's four walls. Whether it's siding, whether it's stone, it doesn't matter to them. They're looking just at the square footage, and that's it.
But you've got to have some sort of idea of what you think the value is here, or else you wouldn't be able to say that you can't, that you have to walk away.
You're
you
right.
Have to do it on all
You're right.
sides.
So the best comparable as of right now, it's going to have to be Cedardale. That's
Okay.
it.
And how much was that?
That was sold for $435.
$435.
Yes.
Okay, and so you're saying
That's now, but mind you, $435 at the time when we're doing a development of our townhouses, 3 different phases. First phase, year and a half ago, my lumber package was $17,000. I'm doing the last phase today. My same exact lumber package, I'm at $48,000. The same exact thing.
Right.
So when I started Cedardale, my lumber package was one price. By the time I started Sequoia, my lumber package is going to be a whole different ballgame. I bought plywood at $54 a sheet. Now it's almost $90 a sheet.
As a homeowner with an 1880s house, I'm sympathetic to lumber prices. Unfortunately, it doesn't change the historic importance. So that's the struggle. But I personally feel that impact as well. I think we all are as a struggle with coming out of the pandemic and materials shortages.
Isaac, I wanted to ask you this because I know we got to at some point come to a decision.
Sure.
Are you, based on what Commissioner Cates said, would you be willing to share with us whatever it would take so that we could see, so that our CHAP staff could be able to see what it would take to do the walls all the way around both properties or one of the properties? I mean, that's what I want to ask you. Just wanted to see.
But I don't see a problem getting you a quote from a mason guy and just,
Well, I think it would also be
I was going to go to the next route, if you would.
total development costs.
Right, there you go. I was about to ask the total development costs.
I would not be comfortable sharing that information, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable. I want certain things I can maybe break around, I'm okay with, but at this point, honestly, from my perspective, with everything that I've learned, I'm trying to find a decent medium here, if we can. If we cannot, then I'm just gonna say, you know what? I'll learn my lesson and move on, But I think ultimately, I really believe, given the fact that I've done so much work in Ashburn, I've done stuff on Callaway, I've done stuff on, all over the place. I've been doing this for 20 years. We've rehabbed over 400 houses. I've built personally with my brother over 50 houses. So I'm not Ryan Home. I'm not a big, and I've clearly learned a lot through this process with CHAP, a lot. But I truly believe that as a community, as it goes further, will ultimately benefit than just having a piece of land sitting there. You're dealing with somebody who is new in terms of the CHAP angle, and if we can find the right conversation and put the past aside, then I think ultimately community will benefit. It's going to bring great people, because somebody buying a house for $450, it's just not somebody. They're valued people, and you've met Dr. Harriet, who bought on Cedar property. She's a doctor, PhD, and professor. So these are the type of people that this community will bring to you guys. So, but again, I totally understand from all angles. I just want to find a common ground that we come to terms with, that you see my side, I see your side, and let's hopefully somehow make it work.
Thank you, Isaac. Oh,
One
go
more
right
question,
ahead.
just, is the Cedardale house about the same size as these two?
Relatively, yes.
relatively
But one of the major concerns was the elevation, that someone's going to have no steps, meaning it's going to be pretty much flush with the ground. That was the biggest concern they had, is to replicate the left and the right, so it's not just going to stick up like that. So they're going to be more or less on the same roof line as the other two houses on each side.
But I would just say square footage wise, though, the inside of the house is about the same.
One is
Cedardale
smaller,
is-
and the other one I think is about the same size, I think.
Okay, but they're close. I'm just thinking of the comparable, if you're saying that's the most
As a matter of
recent
fact, no, I
comparable.
think Cedardale, this thing is bigger, actually. I think that's 32 feet, I think. And this is 30 and 28.
Okay.
So it's actually
So
a
it's a
little
little
smaller.
bit bigger?
Smaller.
Oh, the Cedardale one is a little smaller? No,
Cedardale's
these are
bigger.
smaller.
These are smaller.
These were smaller, the Cedardale was bigger.
Bigger, yeah.
All right.
Okay, commissioners, what I would like to do now is to put a motion on the floor for all of us to vote on, unless there is further comments from any of you.
Just one comment, then I'm
Yes, sir.
I'm
Go
ready
ahead,
to
Paul.
motion. But I think the one thing to think about too is that while I understand everything that's coming from the developer in terms of what needs to be done, what needs to be done in a particular development. I'm a developer myself, so I understand all that, right? But as developed in the CHAP district as well, you have to take on that responsibility. That is part of the development now. That's part of the entitlement process. That's part of the budget. So my position is that I'm just going to make it simple. I'm listening to the community. Community's amendable, in which I think I am as well, in my position. But I don't think the project as it stands right now is not compatible to this district right now, currently. So, not to say that it can't happen. I think it just needs more work and more time. That's my position. So I'm going to motion later, whenever it's ready, to not approve this right now. It needs to go back to the drawing board. Staff said that this is still at the massing level of complexity. I think if there's not any sort of, if there seems to be not much pushback, not much negotiation on how to treat materialities, I'm concerned about that. So then I think that there should be a further study on articulation and massing then, to start thinking about that a little bit more. And then you can come back and say, well, I'm going to decide to use this materiality or that material or a multiplicity of materialities. But at this point, the massing doesn't allow. I don't believe it allows for that. Long story short, I think the case here, this is a hearing. It's the materials that are set forth in front of me right now is not adequate. I need to see more convincing argument that this project is compatible to the neighborhood, meaning that there's a real understanding and research and identification of what's on that street, so they can say, hey, my project is compatible because I've looked at this property, I looked at this property, I've looked at this property. I don't see that sort of understanding. I don't see that sort of investigation. I don't see also that we're looking at a three-dimensional house on a lot, and we see two-dimensional drawings. We don't see any material, So I think if we're talking about matching scale of proportion as a concept design review, this is not ready yet. So I'm going to motion to disapprove and that it needs to come back.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners, any comments before we put the motion on the floor? Okay, so the motion on the floor is to disapprove the recommendations for 3603 Sequoia Avenue for the new construction aforementioned in the recommendations, but to allow the opportunity for more community engagement and for more information to be put together to bring about a new proposal to be shared with the commission. That is on the floor.
I second. Commissioner Edwards.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Go right ahead, Eddie.
Question of the commissioners. While massing is of an issue that needs to be articulated and refined, is the height and the scale of the proposal generally in the right direction?
I think so.
I saw no problem with it. I mean, unless there's a consensus that there isn't.
I think that the general, it fits within the FAR of the site. That seems fine. But to Kapow's point, you could wind up with a house that looks very different, that, what if roofs are cheaper than walls? You could put more floor plan under a steeply pitched roof and that might work out better. I mean, I can't answer that. That's where I think that we're tentative about saying that. Is that fair?
Yeah, so I don't think it's necessarily a mass, like a FAR, if it meets that standard of zoning kind of buildable. I think that's probably, whatever it is in terms of the zoning is probably appropriate. I think it's more about the articulation of the building, massing wise. So that
Right, so
doesn't
there's-
necessarily mean density, vertical. It also means horizontality, horizontal. Or it could, in any case here before right now, it's a dumb box. And if you're going to treat it as a dumb box, there's a contemporary way to do it as such. It's not being done right now.
Thank you. Eddie, could you take us to 3605? For the record, is there any discussion in reference to this? I want to refer back to what you mentioned, Peter, about the porch in depth, keeping that in mind as well, and also keeping in mind what Commissioner Poe shared with us as well, and also to the all three sides of the home, including what the community shared with us today as well. I'd like to put a motion on the floor, but before I do that, any discussion before we do the motion? Okay. I'd like to make a motion for 3605 Susquehanna Avenue, new construction. Sequoia, forgive me. Long day. Sequoia, forgive me. Sequoia, 3605 Sequoia Avenue, new construction, that the application as it stands is denied, but the applicant is given the opportunity to re-engage with the community, bring new drawings, and then continue and then share with the board. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
In past reviews, when we've had difficulty reaching a design solution at the hearing, the staff has brought the applicant with some more refined drawings to the Architectural Review Committee of the Commission. And then, after that final more input, then come to a commission hearing for a more definitive review.
Eddie, is that
something I can work with the applicants to do?
Oh, have no problem. I wanted to ask, is that something here at this meeting where we would decide who the committee would be, or is that something that you and the executive director?
Decide separately.
Separately?
On this, on who the Architectural Review Committee is of the commission.
Okay.
And then I will then work with the applicants and the community to refine some designs so that could be brought back for a future consideration.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your input. And Eric wants to say something. Go right in.
Yes, I just wanted to just further what Eddie said and just say that we are offering the opportunity for you to think through and revisit your plans. And then prior to bringing them back to a full commission, you could share them with Eddie and several, 2 or 3 of the commissioners here, and then they would be able to help comment on that. So, and maybe provide insight and opportunity on those plans in relationship to the CHAP process. So that's an opportunity that we will offer you. Most of the time, it's the architects that would sit on that. Commissioner Powell's been on it for a couple of years now.
Do we have a, so what I'm learning about all this, okay, and correct me if I'm wrong. So when you talk about a dumb box, right. So believe it or not, dumb box has been my most successful box I've ever had in my life. Because the box that every time I sell maximizes the inside of the home. When you start to do all these cuts and turns and all this, it looks great from the outside, don't get me wrong, but when it comes with such a small little 30-foot lot, your inside, your walkway in the kitchen, you can't put cabinets and so that's something for you guys to consider as well. Again, this is not my first rodeo as far as the builder, okay? And I also have quite a bit of experience. I've built $1 million house before. I can give you these cuts and all this. It's all beautiful. But we're working with such a tight space. I guess I have to go back to my architect and try to start figuring things out how, because, I'm giving you the look on the outside, but the inside becomes very impractical. It's so, the rooms are tiny, you can't put a closet, you got to worry about the stairways, you got to worry about all these, again, it's.
So Isaac, I don't want to cut you off, but our decision has been rendered. Now, if you do have questions or concerns that you want to share with Eddie or the rest of the staff, this committee is not at all arguing about your experience, what you've done. We actually appreciate you investing in Baltimore, so let that be very clear. But when we make decisions here, after we've made decisions, we want to make sure that not only you understand, but there's opportunity for you to come back to us and share with us what you can and can't do. But I don't want to take it to that scenario where we're having another dialogue after the decision is rendered. Is that okay?
Fair enough.
Okay, I appreciate
So
it.
just to clarify, so once I come up with new plans, I will have an opportunity to meet one of the, I'm assuming, architects here?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. So you also will meet with Eddie again.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Fantastic.
So thank you, Isaac. We're about to not only conclude with our meeting, but this is still a public hearing. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to leave. Just letting you know it's still public, so we're just going to continue. Do we have any old business, commissioners, that we'd like to discuss before we adjourn? Commissioner?
Not old business.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a good day. Have a good day.
It's not old business, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to have a sense of who is on the Architectural Review Committee.
Oh, by all
for the
means. By all means.
commission,
Eddie,
and kind of the function.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and it's we kind of sprung it on you. And I apologize for that. It's hard. What we discovered several years ago that we have great commissioners with great skill, and those folks can really help out CHAP and help out projects that seem stuck in the mud to move forward. So we've put together no more than 3, because remember, if there's more than 3 commissioners that get together, that turns into a public meeting, and that needs to be advertised, and the public needs to be there. So this Architectural Review Committee is 3 commissioners that get together and review a project that's been kind of like stuck in the mud, and they help provide insight and comments to try to push it forward in some aspect. I'm going to stop there because Commissioner Powell's been one of the We've really leaned heavily on her, so if you want to add anything.
No, I think that's it. We just open up a dialogue with the architect and kind of move some direction back and forth. And I think that having a direct conversation that's more conversational, you know, is very productive.
So I would not necessarily want to serve on that because I think that we need our expertise, you know, particularly at that level. But it would be a tremendous learning opportunity for me. So is there a way to come and vow silence or something so that we don't,
Sure, there's actually a couple ways that we've done. I mean, we, especially during COVID, we would just, Eddie would get the plans, the new plans, and he would just send them out email and ask for comments. And
I would say that when we had the phone conversations, it was much more productive. That doing the circulating the PDFs was kind of painful.
Okay.
yeah, we could try to, like I said, if we get 4 commissioners in a room, all of a sudden it turns into this magical public meeting and new rules start
And
to
I
happen.
think
Can't
that's
like
what.
audit the meeting.
Yeah.
Space has got to
We
come.
could also record one of those and then share with everyone.
Oh, that would be even better.
Okay.
Then you would see.
Yeah, welcome to the studio.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the expertise on this committee.
I
thank you.
I think, Dr. Rodwell, that you have some great expertise that will be well used on a subcommittee of some sort.
Of some sort.
So no fears
That's
there.
encouraging. That's, somewhere we'll find something for me to do. That's good. Thanks, Catherine. I appreciate it.
Doctor, thank you for your question. Do we have any new business that we'd like to share before we adjourn?
So I did want to talk about just maybe process or maybe more instruction for those who are presenting. I need to do this. All right. Proposals to the commission. You know, the question that I asked about, did you know that this was a historic community? I mean, that will help. I don't know how we address this now or what we can do in the future, just to help developers or property investors who want to work within Baltimore City but are unaware of what's required based on where they're developing. Another thing that I don't know if I apologize for not confirming, just how to present to the commission. I mean, one of the things that was suggested is, you know, look around the community and provide examples of, you know, what you're proposing and how it fits within the rest of the neighborhood. I know from a multifamily level and for UDAP, because I'm most familiar with that, that's part of the presentation by the architect when they present to UDAP. They're showing how the proposed product matches the existing community, what components, so that when UDAP reviews it, they understand that that analysis or that study has occurred. Do we have that in our guidelines?
Good question. Do we have that in our guidelines?
The answer is yes, we do have that in our guidelines, but it may not be explicit. We may use being compatible with the general surroundings and specific surroundings of that type of language, but we can make it more explicit, and I think that's one of the reasons why we want to work with you all to really look at the process and procedures and even guidelines and do our revisions as we move forward.
And I would say application form as well as part of that process. Because as someone who's
Sure.
had
Yep,
to fill it out on multiple occasions, there are definitely times that I'm like, I want to talk about this. Where do I put it? Or, you know, maybe this piece of information is important. So if we get into something that is like, oh, we want to see this on a more consistent basis, we may want to consider adding it into the form as something they need to provide.
And I'm sorry, I don't have a microphone, but just in terms of the staff part, like, you know, this is part of our role as the staff, right? As we meet with the developers beforehand, we talk about, you know, what the hearing entails. And I always, for new construction, encourage developers to like put together a narrative for projects like this so they can explain just those things. Some developers and some architects are really good at putting all that stuff together, and some everybody comes with different things. And everybody puts, it's kind of a, and I agree. I think, hopefully we get that opportunity to provide, I like to tell everybody that comes to help them put their best foot forward. That's our role, right? To show them what they need to put their best foot forward so you all can understand that and make the best decision. And I think one of the things we want to do, and this kind of highlighted that, is really streamline and help developers, especially newer developers, through the new construction process a little bit. Give them more feedback before they reach this point. So that's one of the nice things, is the Architectural Review Committee helps with that, some staff assistance as well. But we do try to give them everything they need to put their best foot forward. Like and to tell them what a hearing is like, all of that sort of thing. That's supposed to be our role, to do
And
that.
you're gonna get a different result from a person doing 2 houses in a neighborhood than you are from somebody doing a $20 million project in the city.
Exactly. And I think also the staff can take some of that on as well.
No, I understand that, but we asked him to come back after he did a study of the neighborhood and identify different products that match or that kind of, so yeah, I just think when presenting to the commission, because Baltimore City has a lot of work to do, and it's easy to get discouraged when you go through this type of process. And so we don't want to appear to be that city that makes it hard to do development. And I think, as a developer and being a part of many advocacy groups of developers, for-profit and nonprofit, that often is the case, and a lot of people feel that way. And, you want to encourage the smaller developers, but you also want to make sure that they understand where they're developing and they're doing their homework, and it's not about just getting a profit. And I don't feel, as a developer, knowing what I present whenever I come to the city or anywhere, he didn't do his homework. And there were, I didn't see his numbers. I don't know what his numbers look like. There's some questions I have, and I think you have some questions too. But I think it would have been helpful. Like, we were sitting here we Googled, we were both looking at the map and just seeing different examples of what he could have done based on just going around the corner, And I just think that if we're providing just maybe a little bit more guidance before they come here, and just to help them out. I just, yeah.
Nicole, your comment was dead on. I really like when you mentioned about, did you know this was a historic, district? Because I think that sets the stage for maybe all and anyone that comes here, that keeps them from knowing let's help us know and help them know what the criteria is for building a house. So I think you raise a good point, and I think this gives the commission an opportunity to champion something like that and change it. So you had a question, you had a comment?
So to answer your question, to speak to your comment, Ms. Battle, we do hold pre-development meetings. So next month, for example, on Monday, yesterday, me and Eric met with the community and the developer for 123 Warren Avenue. They're doing a structure above for the egress for their rooftop deck. This is uncommon. They claim Federal Hill is a hodgepodge when it comes to decks, exterior decks, which is true. However, we cannot approve overhead structures for decks. I let them know this yesterday. So the community wasn't too sure if we could approve it. They weren't too sure if we could approve it. I told them yesterday, based on our guidelines, I cannot approve this. I will be recommending disapproval at the hearing. Now, you can get support from the community for your structure, and you can present this to the commission, and that will ring differently than me just saying, I recommend disapproval for your rooftop structure. So I did let them know that they can continue to work with the community despite me letting them know that this is something that does not meet our guidelines. So I was able to, so the developer now has a new knowledge. They're actually going to do a completely different design because they're completely scrapping the structure above, because they don't even want to go down the road of presenting something that doesn't meet our guidelines to you all. So they're going to explore more options. And they're going to try to meet the deadline. And so our deadline is actually this Friday. So we've actually extended extended the deadline for this developer because they have been working with me and they are now working with the community as well. So since they are working with us, we have already seen the plans they presented several times. We're going to be more lenient. Even they have until like next Friday, I mean, I don't really mind when they send me the information because I know, as you said, it's very stressful and it can be very discouraging when you go through these city processes. So the deadline is the deadline, but they still have freedom to send it after because I understand things happen. So that's what I have been doing in my neighborhoods to make sure these developers know. And I kind of feel like it's been effective letting them know directly what I'm going to recommend. Because at the end of the day, as you are the commissioners and you will make the final decision. So them knowing my recommendation it helps them better understand the guidelines because they all read the guidelines and they have their own interpretations. But it really comes down to staff's interpretation of that guideline. And then it's also the commissioner's decision and motion that will really make the final decision. And the community, and they need to really understand how important the community is when it comes to their presentations. So at those pre-development meetings, we try to do that, but not all developers are as easy to get in contact with.
Tariq, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, and that's why I tried to make a few of the comments that I made to really stress to him, because having been on the other side of it, I know how hard it can be and stressful sitting over there going, I just want to get this approved so the project can keep moving forward. And I think this can feed into some of the other conversations we've been having about education and, do we look at other workshops or, things and getting into that when we get into kind of the visioning. I think that's all stuff we can talk about to try to help some of that, right? Ultimately, we can offer everything under the sun, but if someone doesn't come attend it, we're still going to end up in the same scenario. So all we can do is try to make it as available as possible.
That's great. That's great. Well, we are, before I conclude, Eric, is there anything you'd like to share with us as we go into the other business, if there's any?
Well, thank you, Commission. I think that actually this post-hearing conversation, even though it's still a hearing, but this post-agenda item conversation has been very useful. We're also going to get to know each other a lot more, and I think as we start to know each other, things will start clicking, and I think we'll get to decisions quicker and maybe more comprehensive. But Commissioner Good is absolutely right. This is one of the reasons why I think that visioning exercise would be so important. And just listening to the things, I've had half a dozen ideas already on maybe how we can do things. But at the end of the day, I just want to brag about the staff and then I'll shut up, is that we really try hard to make sure that the applicants that come in front of this commission not only put their best foot forward, but what we want them to do is to put their project forward. And after the presentation, there's silence and somebody says, move to approve. And that's what we really want. We want it to be as quick and easy as we can. We also bring you the very complicated projects too. But there's ways that we could do it better. And I'm really excited to explore that with you all and the staff. All right, I'm done.
That's fine, that's fine. I want to thank everyone today for this hearing. This was a really great one. We learned and did a lot together. Poe, thank you for the comments that you shared and helping us as well. Everyone, I hope you have a good day.
Do we have to move to adjourn or anything?
Yeah, we do. I'm about to give the time. Hold on 1 second. I'll give it to you. So look at my watch. The time now is 3:58. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Move the meeting adjourned.